And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Thursday, October 27th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by BetMGM. 4-game slate. We're going to be able to really dig into each one of these teams today, coming off of yesterday's 10-gamer and before we get to tomorrow's 11-gamer. Before we get started, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. You'll see our handles at the bottom of the screen, at Josh Engleman, at ShipMyMoneyDFS. It's going to be a good one. Adam, how are you? I didn't get to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, pretty good. I think it's for a 4-game slate. I think it's a pretty fun one.
It is. I did enjoy going through it on the process this morning. No, really crazy games. We're waiting on Paul George news, obviously. Not too many other major pieces of information that are hanging in the balance, though. And if there's no Paul George, we kind of just saw this one. So you would think it'd be easy. I'm absolutely waiting for Oklahoma City to rule out or not activate two different people than they did 2 days ago. But I don't know how much that's actually going to matter if it happens. But I see that one coming.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's going to be Jang and somebody else are inactive. And
yeah. I don't have too much to shoot the shit about before we get started. It's kind of weird. When we don't do the strategy show together, I don't really need to ask about yesterday. I feel it feels like that has already sailed. So you want to just get into this one?
Yeah.
All righty. Let's kick it off. God, thank you for being here already, by the way. We're up to 800 people, 100 likes. That's clearly not enough. You guys are going to have to make that one go up, but we got a lot of weird stuff to talk about here. Let's start it off. Let's see. We'll go Dallas Mavericks, -2.5 in Brooklyn, 225 total. Brooklyn on the back-to-back. For Dallas, not too much here. We're waiting on the news on Tim Hardaway Jr. Has a little bit of bearing on Dallas, but not nearly as much as you would expect. On the opposite side for Brooklyn, we already got the news that Joe Harris is going to be out for injury management. We're already without Seth Curry, TJ Warren, Markieff Morris. Everybody else, all of the quote-unquote big three for Brooklyn are available. Let's start on the Dallas side, where for the first time in a while, it didn't take very long for these sites to start getting real price tags. Luka Doncic, $12K on DraftKings, $12K on FanDuel, 18% owned on DK, 33 on FanDuel on our last run of ownership. I mean, that's a pretty healthy price tag for a 4-game slate, but at least it's right.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that makes today actually pretty interesting because we have aggressive pricing on Luka, but we actually have pretty aggressive pricing everywhere. There's not a lot of glaring value in any price range. And so I think that's interesting because obviously I would love to get the Luka. I have him projected as the highest owned guy by a lot, but it's tough. Right now I'm getting to around 13% on DraftKings, getting quite a bit more on FanDuel. I actually think DraftKings is more suited for his scoring than FanDuel is. He's been great this year, 1.8 fantasy points per minute. He's got about a 42% usage rate, 44% assist percentage. I expect all of those things to come down, but at the same time, he's really, really good. I'm happy to get to as much Luka as I can. It's going to partially depend on ownership, and then it's also just going to depend on if any value opens up.
Yeah, right now I'm about neutral on FanDuel. I think I'm going to struggle to get way over that number, just given where some of this value is in the 8 and 9K range. But I mean, clearly an outstanding play, clearly the highest projected guy on this slate. Not really all that close for me either. And I mean, it's Luka Doncic. He's one of the few guys where we don't really need to talk about him too much. We talk about him with relationship to ownership, but we all know what you're getting. We all know that he has the capability of simply being an absolute necessity on this slate. Raw points matter.
Yeah. And I actually just updated a couple of things. I'm still waiting on our ownership update, but I updated a couple of things and now I'm down. I went from 60% Luka on FanDuel to 30. So, okay. Yeah, it kind of just tells me that I have a pretty wide range of where I could end up on Luka. One thing that I think is a little bit useful on FanDuel is that he is point guard, shooting guard, whereas DraftKings, he's only point guard. And DraftKings has been pretty strict with the not giving everybody MPE this year. So when you're getting these guys with just point guard eligibility, the opportunity cost gets pretty high.
Now we could touch on the rest of this Dallas team, and no one is exactly standing out here. Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Maxey were over 10% owned on the DraftKings side. Dorian Finney-Smith and Dinwiddie were both over on the FanDuel side. Maxey didn't get there. Who is your second favorite play from Dallas today? I've got one, and I'm hoping it's the same person.
Well, it does depend on Hardaway. I kind of disagree on him not making a big difference here. Like, Spencer Dinwiddie played 37 minutes last game with him out.
Yeah.
I think if he's in, Dinwiddie's playing like 30 minutes. So
that was more of like it doesn't create anything new. Like, there's not a guy stepping into 26 minutes of Tim Hardaway at 3,500 or something today that's like Dinwiddie then gets a little bit more already playable, just more playable. We don't create any like value play lock cash game type guys.
Right, yeah, I agree with that. It just makes Dinwiddie look really good, I think. Whereas,
Absolutely.
like, right now with Hardaway projected in, I'm only getting like 12% Dinwiddie. I think I would get a lot more at 5,500 or 5,600 if Hardaway's out. But actually on DraftKings right now, the guy I'm getting to the most is actually Finney-Smith, which I am not at all excited about. It's just a value piece at forward when, you know, a lot of the guys I want to pay up for are at guard and there's not a lot of value. Getting around 18% there on DraftKings, on FanDuel getting around 13%. So again, like, I don't like Dorian Finney-Smith as a DFS option, but he fits pretty nicely into some lineups. I am getting quite a bit more Dinwiddie on FanDuel than I am on DraftKings as well.
Yeah, Dinwiddie's the guy that I was going to reference. 5K on FanDuel. I have him in for 30 minutes, assuming Tim Hardaway is in. If he's out, then I'm just going to get more Dinwiddie, obviously. But at 5K with the dual eligibility, he hasn't been great this year, 0.77 FanDuel points per minute so far. I have him obviously a little bit higher than that, but we were projecting 20% ownership. I've got him at 35, so I am taking that sort of stand. I actually have more Dinwiddie than Luka on the FanDuel side. Not that I think that that's all that crazy, but happy to get there.
Does it change your opinion that somebody in chat thinks Luka will sit?
I mean, where is that?
It says Dinwiddie is the play. He's going for 40. I think Luka will sit.
Yeah. You're probably not going to sit given the fact that he is not on the injury report. It's 5:30. That would be a bold statement, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that Luka Doncic is playing since he is not out already or questionable at the very least. Yeah. He is fully not available.
If you want to roll Campazzo, I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah, please. Somebody's got to pay the rake today. But you seem like you're trying to get to the front of the line.
But yeah, to your point on Dinwiddie, on FanDuel, he's right there with Luka as far as my highest owned guy.
Alrighty. After that, like, clearly Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, they are not going to be fun plays. Bullock 3,700 on FanDuel, but still not a guy that I'm getting to all that much. These guys are where fantasy points per minute go to die. And then you get to Christian Wood, where he's just a guy that I don't know what to do with. 7,500 on DraftKings, 8,200 on FanDuel. His minutes seem like relatively set in stone. But if he just keeps having like 30-something% usage and 75% true shooting, like, what happens to him?
Yeah, I don't know what to do with him. The one thing that I do think with Wood is that the ownership and salary are kind of already there. There's obviously a lot of downside when you're talking about a guy coming off the bench playing like 28 minutes at 7,500 or at 8,200. There's upside for him as well, just given how well he's produced this year and how well we've seen him produce in the past. But if he's going to get double-digit ownership and you're already paying a pretty healthy price tag, it's just a spot where I have difficulty getting that much of him.
Yeah, if Christian Wood drops a 50-plus fantasy point game today, I'm just going to be shit out of luck. I don't have a single share on FanDuel right now at 8,200, and I don't expect to.
Yeah, right now I have 4% on DraftKings, 5% on FanDuel. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, if I had 5%, that would be fine to me too. But like, I just don't. That's too big of a price tag. I can't. We got. Every time we lose a troll, we just get another person that just is fantastic.
Did you just one day?
Oh my god, it's incredible. Anybody else that we should be talking about here? Maxey, I mean, Tim Hardaway, I don't think is all that interesting if he's in, but the price tag sort of works if he's playing 26 minutes. Is today the day that, well, at least out on DraftKings, is today a day where maybe JaVale McGee gets to play more than 14 minutes and like sneaks into a $3,600 like blow up spot? I don't know what to do here with the rest of Dallas.
I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get to any JaVale, at least right now on DraftKings, because I do think this is the kind of slate where he does make some sense. He's not getting ownership. He's at 4%. He's 3,600. If he plays 14 minutes, he can get there anyway. Because like with it being a shorter slate, there not being a lot of value, quote unquote, getting there is also kind of dependent on Luka. Like if McGee goes for 18 or 19 DraftKings points, but that just beats the Darius Bazley other, type guys, and Luka goes for 80, McGee's really, really useful, even though he himself didn't do a lot. If he just beats all of the other scrubs and lets you get Luka, then he's really useful. But so like I do like the idea of him. I didn't get much right now. I'm getting to some Kevon Looney. I'm getting to some Sharp. So like I'm getting to guys in that range. It just happens to not be McGee at the moment.
I don't really have any either, but I'm just waiting for that day where he inevitably plays a little bit more. Probably don't need it in this spot, but I don't have really any other major talking points. Like I think we kind of know the guys on the Dallas end that we really need to talk about. So let's move it over to the Brooklyn side. No Joe Harris, which we saw in the opener. He has been back for the previous 3 games. This Brooklyn team has not been able to get things together so far. Durant, O'Neal, Claxton, all the like 10-15% range. Kyrie actually relatively low owned on DK, a little bit less so on FanDuel. He's 20% owned on FanDuel. Ben Simmons, 25% owned on DK, 45% owned on FanDuel at 5,800 point guard power forward eligibility. I'm going straight back to Ben Simmons. I assume you are as well.
Yeah, getting a ton of him on FanDuel in particular right now. I don't really want to. I'm not like thrilled with it, but he's just fairly priced. I'm getting like 15% on DraftKings, getting a hell of a lot more than that on FanDuel. He hasn't been good this year. He's averaging like 0.85 fantasy points per minute. Obviously, he doesn't score a lot. Does have a 35% assist percentage. So again, Brandon Katz can keep saying it in chat, but he is on ball. Otherwise, you don't really get assists if you don't have the ball. Kind of hard to do. So
they probably just have like a really nice scorekeeper.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the assists are there. The rebounding opportunities are there. Played 34 minutes yesterday. Or in their last game. I don't remember if it was yesterday. It's all running together.
No, yeah, they are on a back-to-back.
Okay, yeah. So 2 days ago. Getting more of them on FanDuel looks fine on DraftKings as well. Not getting nearly as much though.
Yeah, I don't. Are you getting to that 45% mark that the field has
on FanDuel?
Yeah,
I am unfortunately over it.
So am I. 58 right now.
Yep, 57.
That is so unappealing. It's another one of those spots. Like we're going to talk about it when we get to Miami too, where I want to be there when it happens.
Well, it sucks too because the scoring, he's kind of like Luka. The scoring is clearly worse for him on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings too. Yeah. Like you're losing a full point for turnovers. You're not getting any sort of double-double or triple-double bonus. Like on DraftKings, the best
I mean, you get that 3-point bonus on DK though. That's good for him.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But like on DraftKings, the main argument that I'm able to make in favor of Simmons, outside of just like, him getting a lot of assists and being relatively inexpensive with MPE, is that there's just not that many guys in that price range with triple-double upside. On FanDuel, it doesn't even matter that much if he actually gets the triple-double, but I'm under the field on DraftKings right now. He's projected for 26% ownership. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Just given everything on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I am over the field even at the higher ownership number.
Like, even if you want to say that his performance this year is real and he's a 0.83 fantasy point per minute guy on FanDuel, he's still got point guard power forward eligibility, playing 33 minutes today and is 5,800. Like, is that a great play? No, but he's like 4.7x. That's the same sort of rate you're getting out of, I don't know, like Royce O'Neal today. It's like,
yeah, I mean,
you have to assume that this is like the absolute floor of everything, and then he projects as like a totally normal guy, or you project him like you should, and he looks like he's underpriced for 5,800.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if you just take that 0.83 fantasy points per minute, which there's a very, very good chance is lower than he's going to average for the season based on everything we know about Ben Simmons, you're still talking about like a 28 to 29 point projection here at 5,800, which is, sort of whatever. But we know that we're talking about like, not going to end up being, we're not going to look back on Simmons at the end of the year and say 0.83 was high. We're probably going to look back and say it was low. And completely agree with whoever it was in chat that asked why Brandon Katz thinks we're playing over under on points scored and not fantasy points.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost as like we can get stuff for rebounds and assists and steals and blocks, and like he does all of those things. Like I don't even need like, well, he needs to score what, like 10 real points? I could just be 2 steal fast break runouts and like a couple quick putbacks. I don't need him out there taking jumpers all over the floor. Leave that for the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irvings of the world. Like, he could just fall into 8 to 10 points.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually, I mean, it depends. Like, if you're just saying Ben Simmons does all of the other stuff and scores, then obviously he would look better than he does. But on the team he's on, I would rather Ben Simmons be somebody that doesn't score very much, rebounds and gets assists, than another guy that needs to score while playing with Kyrie and Kevin Durant.
Let's talk about Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, 10K on DraftKings, 9,700 on FanDuel. Pretty popular on FanDuel, too, 32% owned. Irving, 9,600 and 9,400. I'm getting to a little bit more Irving on FanDuel than I am Durant. I am a little bit lighter than that ownership number, but I think both of those price tags work. I think these guys look really, really similar relative to salary.
I'm not getting to much Kyrie. Obviously wouldn't be upset if I get to more, but I'm getting like 7% on FanDuel, getting 20% Durant, getting like basically no Kyrie on DraftKings, getting basically no Durant either. So I lean Durant, just, you know, he's the better fantasy producer. He's also at a weaker position, which I think pushes him up a little bit.
I kind of do want to get a little bit more Durant. I was surprised to see 32% ownership, honestly. That's not that it's like a pretty big number and it's Kevin Durant, but there are other options in that range. I'd like to have a little bit of both. And right now I do. I'm neutral on Irving, a little bit light on Durant. After that, I have a lot of trouble getting to anything else from Brooklyn, whether that's Royce O'Neal, who's playing massive minutes for them. Nick Claxton, not a guy that I'm finding easy to get to at 6,700 on FanDuel today. 6K on DraftKings, a little bit more appealing. I mean, the rest of the bench is terrible. Patty Mills, Daron Sharp, Edmund Sumner. Like, I don't think anybody else gets enough minutes to matter. Do you like anything else here for Brooklyn?
No, I think you're right on Claxton. I didn't really get much on FanDuel. Got a little bit more on DraftKings. Got a little bit, I mentioned it earlier, I got a little bit of Daron Sharp on DraftKings. That's basically just what we were talking about with JaVale McGee. Good point per minute guy if he happens to pick up a few more minutes or just play really well. That value could be useful, but it's basically just it's because there's just not value on this slate. It's not because I really see anything in Daron Sharp. Chad is really on one today. Now we have Kevin Durant sitting as well.
Oh my God. Where do people get this? I truly don't understand. I really, really, really do not understand. Would you be setting any rules about Durant, Irving, and Ben Simmons in the same lineup? Or is Simmons' salary low enough that you don't care?
I'm just not going to get it anyway.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, I have my generic rule where if I have 3 guys from one team, I'm running it back with somebody.
Okay. Not something that I would set either. Just that's the type of question we would get. Anything else here for Brooklyn or Dallas?
No.
All right. Schedule for the rest of the day. So coming up after us at 6:30, you'll get NBA Live Before Lock. They'll take you all the way up until 7:30. But we also have another live show going off at 7 o'clock. That is NFL Live Before Lock. That's going to be for Thursday Night Football. I don't have a damn clue who plays tonight. Do you?
Ravens,
Buck. Wow, that's a real game on Thursday?
Yeah.
What are the odds? Somehow that's going to be ass. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, NFL Live Before Lock at 7. So we'll have 2 shows going at the same time. If you're in for the NBA, please watch that one. If you're in for the NFL, please watch that one. Either way, you're getting a lot of Stokastic.com tonight. All righty. We go to the Clippers. 6.5 point favorites in OKC, 217 total. Obviously, we just saw this game 2 games ago. We're running it back now again. Still no Kawhi Leonard. Still no Marcus Morris. Q tag on Paul George. He is out with a non-COVID illness, and that is why he missed that previous game. I always just tend to think that if you miss a game for an illness, you're probably getting back if you don't play a back-to-back. So I have Paul George in for right now. 9,400 on DraftKings, 9K on FanDuel, and we know what Paul George is when Kawhi Leonard is not active, and that is quite a big hub of absolutely everything for the Clippers.
Yeah, he's really interesting here because if he plays, he looks great. He on FanDuel right now is my 3rd highest owned guy at like 67%. I'm actually not getting to too much on DraftKings, but wouldn't be upset if that changed. It's just that the guard positions are pretty loaded there, so it makes it a little bit more difficult, but about a 34% usage rate without Kawhi going back to last year. Gets a lot of assists as well, and with it being an illness, not an injury, I'm not worried about the playing time either.
Same. I gave him 35 minutes. He is my most exposed player on FanDuel right now, although if we get news about him prior to lock, I think the 29% ownership we're showing on FanDuel goes up quite a bit. So
yeah, agreed.
I'll probably end up with something in the 50% range if he is in, and I will be quite happy about it.
Yeah. The numbers in games without Kawhi, which is pretty much, a lot of them, obviously. Last season, 34.3% usage rate, 29.3% assist percentage, 1.3 to 1.35 fantasy points per minute, depending on your site.
We'll hit the super chat quickly from Mahatub. Thank you. Would you guys go with KD or Kyrie in a GPP on FanDuel? You're leaning KD, correct?
Yeah. I think they're both fine, but now I'm getting more KD.
I don't really see a difference between the two of them. The rest of the lineup matters, but the answer is both.
I mean, the reason I prefer KD is basically SGA, Luka, George.
Fair.
Drawing Morant, Bane. I just want to get to these guys.
All right. Next thing we got to talk about. Can't wait to see chat just erupt for this one. Norm Powell, exceptional play on FanDuel at 3,900.
Yeah, going right back to him. And this, I mean, with Paul George projected in, Powell is still my second highest owned guy, basically tied for my highest owned guy on FanDuel right now.
Yep.
He's 3,900. It's just a spot where, sure, he can tank your lineups. It's pretty unlikely, but he managed to do it last game. But at that price tag, it's just the upside is so much higher than the floor. There's not a lot of comparable plays in that price range that give you the same range of outcomes. So, you can always say oh, he's really popular, I'm going to play someone else and hope he shits the bed. But there's just not that many guys that you can swap to where you have that same range of outcomes. So it makes it tough for me to want to get away from him.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer to me. Unless we get lucky enough to see that he's not in the starting lineup and you can finally even if he's not in the starting lineup, he's still a really nice value option at 3,900 just because, but he's not what he is right now, playing 28 to 32 minutes tonight, which is just going to be a guy that I'm putting in basically everything. Now you're lucky on DraftKings because he's 5,500.
Right. And he's fine on DraftKings too, but obviously not anywhere near the same play. And just to elaborate on Powell, so he's played 105 minutes this year. He's averaged half of a fantasy point per minute, but he has a 21.5% usage rate, 33.3% true shooting. I'm kind of surprised that people are still, after how yesterday played out, pretty much every player that we talked about yesterday, where it was just this guy's shooting really poorly, it's going to come around. It just across the board smashed. You're early in the season. Shooting slumps happen. You should not be looking at Norman Powell and being oh yeah, this guy is never going to make shots again. Could he just be done? Sure, but that's certainly not the most likely outcome. The most likely outcome is that this is a 3 or 4 game stretch or whatever where he shoots 33%, and by the end of the year he's back to what he's done for his career, and nobody remembers this stretch. And at this price tag, I'm gonna just keep playing.
Yeah, if we want to have all these talking points for Norm Powell at 5,500 on DraftKings, I think they're all very relevant. They aren't relevant at all for shooting guard, small forward, $3,900 Norm Powell. I don't give a shit at all what he's done so far this season. It is totally meaningless at that point. All I want to know are his minutes, his position, and his salary, and all of those things point me in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah, on DraftKings right now, I'm getting 6%. I will get more if George sits, but on FanDuel, don't really care about George.
This one bothered me. I know I talked about it on the strategy show that they didn't have to worry about, honestly, it changed a little bit once SGA came back in, but do you think we're getting full center run from Zubac again? Seems to me like he's going to be playing 28 to 34 minutes today, barring foul trouble.
I think so. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to, especially if George is back. You can run this rotation a bunch of different ways, especially if George is back. You could just say, okay, well, we're going to play Zubac for 26. We're going to play Covington for 22. We're going to keep Amir Coffey in the rotation and Batum in the rotation and, run 10 guys. And that can happen. But even if that happens, Zubac can still get there. And then there's just the upside of him playing north of 30 minutes again. We've already seen it a couple of times this year. He's a really good point per minute guy. I'm fine with playing Zubac even at the rising price tag.
I am getting to him. He's 28% owned on FanDuel at 6,500. I have a little bit less than that. I gave him 30 minutes. I don't want to go too aggressive on the minutes because he could just as easily play 24. Are you trying to be a little bit more aggressive there, or is that sort of where you are?
I have 21% on DraftKings and on FanDuel.
Okay, cool. Then we get to the rest of this team.
About even with the field on DraftKings and slightly below on FanDuel.
Reggie Jackson, John Wall splitting point guard minutes is pretty easy to project. I feel like the rest of these guys just play like somewhere around 20 minutes, depending on who they are, whether that's Luke Kennard, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, Terrence Mann, Coffee. I don't have too much interest in the rest of this team. I am getting to Reggie Jackson. I wish that I wasn't. He's so bad right now, but at least his bad dates back for the calendar year. But I'm still going to Reggie Jackson, 4,500 on FanDuel, a little bit harder to get to on DK. What else do you see for the Clippers?
We got an ownership update, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So a lot of it does depend on Paul George. Like if George is out, Reggie Jackson clearly can get up a lot of shots like he did last game. As you said, he's been just a horrific shooter going back over a calendar year now. So he's not somebody that I'm just expecting to bounce back, but he'll take the opportunities. But like John Wall's really interesting to me because he only played 19 minutes last game, but we know he physically can play more. He had about a 30% usage rate. If George is out in particular, you certainly could see Wall take on a bigger role offensively. You got a bunch of minutes from Amir Coffey. He could do that again, or you could just get more minutes from Batum or Covington. Covington didn't play down the stretch, even though he was playing well, still only played around 21 minutes. So all of those guys just become sort of interesting tournament options. Terrence Mann is still pretty inexpensive. If George is out, I think it's clearly a bump for him as well.
You don't mind Wall at that 5K price tag?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if George is out.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with him in, I gave him the other Reggie Jackson minutes. So I'm not getting to anything else for this team. It's George and Powell in basically everything. Zubac and Reggie Jackson are like around 20% for me. And I got a small amount of Luke Kennard. I should probably have a little bit more Luke Kennard, but it is Luke Kennard.
That's pretty much how I see it. But like, again, right now I have George projected in. So,
okay. Julio G at the super chat. Sup, fellas? What same team groups are you guys setting tonight? Do you guys set any ownership caps, whether a 4-game slate or a large slate? I don't ever set an ownership cap. That's not something that I worry about. I deal with that elsewhere, sort of. I mean, the chances of me, I probably won't have many groups at all other than any sort of like center interactions.
Yeah, I'll say I didn't set any like super interesting groups. I just set groups like don't play Reggie Jackson and John Wall together. Don't play Daron Sharp and Nick Claxton together, like where guys don't share the floor. But yeah, I didn't do anything creative.
Okay. Anything else for the Clippers?
No.
All righty. Well, let's then get to the Oklahoma City side here. The good news is we just know now that Shea is playing instead of not knowing it like we did the last time. But I just assume this game looks a lot like it did before. We have no Josh Giddey. They're going to end up ruling out like two guys. They probably don't matter. I love Shea once again, but 9,300 on DraftKings looks a lot better than 10,300 on FanDuel. I like him either way, but DraftKings price is not correct.
Yeah, agreed. Getting around 30% on DraftKings. I'm updating now with the new ownership, but I think I had like 29% on DraftKings. On FanDuel, getting like 17% on FanDuel, so not as much, but also more expensive. He looks really good though. You're talking about, somebody that just does everything when Josh Giddey's not out there. Assist percentage goes up. The ball's in his hands more, so he's calling his own number. Usage rate goes up. He's a really, really good option and would be in a lot more of my lineups if Luka and Morant and George and others didn't exist.
Oh God, I just choked on my water. It's awful.
I saw you kind of disappear. Ben Simmons will play and will not have any limitations.
I felt like I was ready to disappear.
No update on Kevin Durant, who could be sitting, I guess.
Can you imagine saying that there's no value on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because of his price?
I mean, it's just a ridiculously bad take.
I mean, he might be the best value play around those prices.
On DraftKings in particular, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh my God, it's incredible. Also, like, I care what people are owned. I don't like, if they're not owned, then the value is different. But
I mean, it's just
whatever.
like, it's just easy, basic math too. Like, you don't need to even be looking at projections. Without Giddey, you're talking about what, like 1.4, 1.45 DraftKings points per minute for Gilgeous-Alexander and 35 or 36 minutes.
Love it. Trey Mann, the other guy that I'm most interested here, and that's where the ownership seems to lie on FanDuel. SGA is 27% owned. Trey Mann's 24. I think he looks good stepping into this role. It was a full stagger their last time out. Yep. So every minute that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wasn't on the floor, Tre Mann is leading the charge for the team. That's just going to be beneficial in the long run for anybody's stats. I think he looks solid.
Yeah, so do I. He's just at a price point that's pretty easy to get to. That being said, I'm actually not getting to much right now. But I have like 5% on DraftKings, 15% on FanDuel. I think he's a good play. It kind of just tells me I'm probably not getting to that price point a ton on DraftKings. Have 13% Dinwiddie at that same price, have 5% Man, have like 6% Wall. So probably a combination of not getting to that price range a ton and then also ownership. But yeah, I like the rotation they ran for him. Overall, since last year, Man's averaged 0.85 DraftKings points per minute with a 22% usage rate without Giddey on the floor. If you also take SGA off the floor, which is probably going to be the case for like 12 of Man's minutes tonight, that usage rate goes up to 27%. The efficiency hasn't been there. He's still only averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute, and that certainly could be a long-term issue for him, especially playing on a terrible team where like when SGA is not on the floor, there's nobody to pay attention to other than Tre Mann. But the opportunity certainly should be there, and this price tag's a little bit cheap.
Now on DK, Dort, Wiggins, Kenrich Williams, Darius Bazley, all getting some ownership. Not the same story on FanDuel, where basically every one of these guys are 2 to 5% owned. I don't have a ton of interest on anybody else from OKC on the FanDuel side. Aaron Wiggins still a value at 3,900. I get his ownership. Same for Williams. Same for Bazley. I don't see any of those guys as priorities. Just guys you kind of rotate through.
Yeah, I don't see much that stands out on the FanDuel side in particular. Not really getting to much of any of those guys. On DraftKings, I think they look a little bit better. Lou Dort's been awful this year, but he's also really inexpensive at 5,700. I'm getting 12%. He's projected for 10% ownership. Yeah. Darius Bazley is a reasonable value option. I'm not getting much of him right now. I think just because he is pulling 17% ownership, but his playing time's really volatile, but he has averaged about a fantasy point per minute this year. So he is somebody at 3,700 where if he happens to, run into 20 plus minutes, you're probably going to want him in your lineups. But with the ownership already there, I think I'm just kind of taking shots on some other guys.
I have nothing else to say about this Oklahoma City team. It's really difficult to prioritize anything else.
Same.
All righty. Well, let's talk a little bit about BetMGM, sponsor of this video. If you live in a legal betting state and you have not signed up yet at BetMGM, pay attention to what I'm saying to you. Hit that like button because we have 2,200 people in here and only 300 likes. And 300 likes is what Adam and Greg left it at yesterday before we ran it up to 1,000 on Live Before Live because we're awesome like that. Now, BetMGM, also pretty awesome. Click the link in the description of this video. Do that. Head on over to BetMGM and make a deposit. Put down $10 on any NBA money line for tonight. Any one of them. If you want to take the biggest one, it's probably Golden State against Miami. You want to go Clippers against OKC, do that. If you want as little risk as possible, put that $10 down. You'll get $200 in free bets as long as somebody makes a three-pointer. So you will get $200 in free bets. Absolute no-brainer for you guys. Just take advantage of it. BetMGM, thank you for being the sponsor. All righty. Let's go to the Miami Heat. 6.5-point dogs in Golden State. One of two games tipping off at 10 o'clock. 227 total here for this one. We got Caleb Martin back in the last one. We are pretty confident in everything that Miami does at this point. Rotation is pretty firm. We did see Jovic get into the game finally, starting to split a little bit of minutes. We'll see where that ends up. I don't think that he's all that relevant for today. But let's talk Butler, Hero, Bam, Lowry. They're all pulling. I mean, on DraftKings, it's 15, 19, 17, 14, 18 for Butler, Hero, Bam, Lowry, Martin. So tough to pin anybody down individually on the DK side. FanDuel, though, 35% ownership going to Butler, 32 to Bam, 25 to Martin, Hero and Lowry both in the teens. I'm getting a ton of this Miami team on FanDuel, but just open it up to you. Like, what stands out most?
I'm getting a lot on DraftKings too, and I don't really love it, but getting to around 30% Bam at 17% ownership, he's another one where he hasn't been good this year. He's averaging about 0.85 DraftKings points per minute. But if you go back to last year and look at all of his minutes with Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler on the floor, he's at 1.13 DraftKings points per minute. His true shooting percentage this year is about 5.5 points lower than his career number, and he's still got about a 22 to 23% usage rate. So you're not talking about the same Bam that just disappeared in the postseason because he turned into Ben Simmons and was afraid to shoot the ball. He's getting his shots up. He's just not making them. That is likely to change sooner than later. 7,300 still looks like a pretty good price tag. And then also working in his favor, center's not a great position on this slate. Normally, there's a ton of opportunity cost. We've seen a lot of slates this year where Bam is just like one of 10 guys at his price point that look good. But here you have Sabonis a little bit more expensive. Other than that, there's not a ton to like at center. So I think it's a little bit easier to get the Bam. Caleb Martin looks like a solid value option. He is getting ownership though, so that's something to keep in mind. But he's likely to give you 28 to 30 minutes. I don't mind taking some shots on Max Strus. He's overpriced at 5K, but he's also only getting 7% ownership. His rotation is basically one where if he plays well, he just does not go back to the bench. We've seen it a couple of times this year. If he does not play well, he will go back to the bench. But if he's not playing well, that lineup's dead anyway, so who cares? Don't mind using him here and there. Kyle Lowry, I am getting over the field on DraftKings, which does not make me feel good. But he's getting 12% ownership. It's only a 4-game slate. The minutes should be there. Hopefully the production's there. I'm also getting a ton on FanDuel, actually, like getting 50% there. So I'm playing a lot of Kyle Lowry tonight, which does not thrill me.
Yeah, I've got a lot of this team on FanDuel. 60% Butler, 60% Bam right now. 2xing Kyle Lowry, still getting to Caleb Martin. I'm a little bit light on Tyler Hero at 7,500, but still getting some. I really like the Miami side of this one. Big time pace up spot against the Warriors. I think that's really helping out the Heat side of this. So that is a team
in the league by a lot.
Yeah, this is a situation where I'm getting quite a bit of the Miami Heat, and I'm happy with it. Gray sent in a super chat. Who would be your most exposed player on DraftKings? He said in a 20 max. I know I was leaving that out because I know that didn't matter.
Yeah, so we just got another ownership update, so I'm putting that in now. But if the slate started right now, it would be Keegan Murray.
Okay. I am so excited to have that conversation.
Followed by Desmond Bane.
There you go. Keegan Murray and Desmond Bane, the 2 highest owned players in our ownership as well.
And your 2 biggest fades.
Yeah, basically. And not because of the ownership really either.
Yeah.
But again, we will touch on both of those things because that's the end of it all. Anything else you want to touch on here for Miami? I think they're pretty easy to talk about. We know who the guys are.
No, I think that's pretty much all I have.
KS hit us with the super chat, said, "You can't fool me. Brandon Katz is Josh's burner to increase chat interaction. Trust me, this is not the interaction I want. I think he's actively ruining chat, if I'm being perfectly honest. I don't want people to think that he has any association with anything involving Stokastic.com. If you ever listen to us talk, you'll know pretty quickly everything he says is wrong. So there's that.
To be fair, I get Brandon Katz like DMs from Josh all day long. I correct them, and then he does this show and sounds intelligent.
Untrue completely, and you know it. Hit that like button, guys. We got to get up over 500 before this show ends. Let's go to the Golden State side.
Lowry.
Yeah, I know. Golden State side of this one, to me, pretty cut and dry. Not a lot of ownership coming in here. Wiggins at 15% on DK, 10% on FanDuel. Draymond's 20% owned on both sites. Jordan Poole's in the teens. Steph, not all that popular on DK at 9,900. A little bit more popular on FanDuel. I'm not getting to a lot of Golden State. I'm not surprised. I never do. And a matchup against Miami is not likely to be bringing it out of them either.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. They're cheap enough where they're kind of interesting, but I'm getting 15 to 20% on Clay and Poole on DraftKings, getting around 15 or 10 to 15% on Wiggins, around 5 to 10% on Curry. I do think Curry's a little bit more interesting on this slate than I normally do, just because he's not getting a ton of ownership. And he's somebody that typically I think is overpriced from his medium projection, but clearly has a massive ceiling. But then he always pulls ownership too because he's Stephen Curry. So typically he just ends up being over-owned to me. Here, I think the ownership is a little bit more in line with where it should be, but it's also just an absolutely stacked guard position. So still pretty difficult for me to really prioritize him.
Yeah, the most I got of anybody right now is 7% of Curry. I also have the same 7% on Draymond Green. The pricing's a lot better on the DraftKings side, so I would get to a little bit more there, but it's a really tough sell on FanDuel. Yeah, $7,900 Andrew Wiggins. I know he's been really good so far this year. 1.3 fantasy points per minute.
Fantasy points per minute.
But still, 7,900 is a lot.
On FanDuel, from the Golden State side, I have 17% Poole, 16% Curry, 10% Draymond, and then it pretty much falls off of a cliff. On the DraftKings side, it's 18% Clay, 17% Poole, 13% Wiggins, and then falls off. Getting some Looney, I think I mentioned that earlier, but that's not anything to do with Looney. It's just, hey, you're cheap and I need value somewhere.
Manny C with the super chat said, Josh, is this a new you? You're being way too nice. Usually you'd be spitting the dude out after eating him alive by now. I can't care. I just don't care anymore. It's so widely apparent how stupid these takes are that I can't even get mad. Like, I almost respect them. The dedication to just like utter lunacy is really special.
7,700 is like the highest price point I think we've had on Wiggins in like ever.
Yeah. Not only that, he's 7,900. It's worse.
Right.
But I wouldn't expect any.
And I'm actually a pretty big Wiggins fan. I think that he got a lot of undeserved shit last year because people didn't understand how All-Star voting worked and said that he didn't deserve to get it when he did because of how flawed the voting is. But then it just like turned into this thing where like, oh, Andrew Wiggins sucks when he's not. He's good. Right.
Well, Andrew Wiggins sucked because he was overpaid.
Right.
Which has nothing to do with his on-product court. And then he became a different player and bought into real coaching instead of having 15 different coaches in Minnesota. Like, there's a reason it's also getting better. But like, we got to just remember, so much of the discourse was just because he had a big deal. By the way, last time that Andrew Wiggins was north of 7,900 was in early 2019. Definitely had a slightly different role in the league at that point, with like a 30-something% usage rate. But yeah, we'll comp that right now at 7,900. That seems similar. The last time he was over 7,900, we didn't know what COVID was. Anything else for Golden State?
Nope.
All righty. This is...
Hardaway is playing.
Good.
That's the only relevant thing that just came through.
Yes. So just to say it officially, Tim Hardaway Jr. will play today. So that makes the Dallas decisions a little bit easier. But let's just get into this Memphis-Sacramento game because it's sort of a gigantic outlier for this slate. Memphis is a 3-point favorite in Sacramento, 236 total. That's 9 points higher than any other game. We know that there's not a lot of defense going to be played on the Sacramento side. This is going to be a real conversation. So let's start here. Ja Morant, 10,200 on DK, 10,600 on FanDuel. To me, looks good, not great. It's a heavy price tag. I prefer SGA to Ja today, which is kind of limiting, but I don't think the ownership is all that crazy.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that Ja is a little bit more expensive. I would like to get to as much Ja as I can, but he's also pulling 28% ownership. I'm just going to end up getting to more SGA, I think. So as is right now, I'm getting like 10% Ja on DraftKings, getting 30% SGA, also getting a ton of De'Aaron Fox on the other side of this game that we'll talk about. On FanDuel, getting also like 10% Ja, getting 17% SGA. So yeah, like I think I think Morant looks very good. Dillon Brooks being back is a negative for him, but he's still very good. He's just not as involved as when Dillon Brooks isn't playing because Dillon Brooks plays what he does. But yeah, Ja looks really good, but at current ownership, I just get to more SGA.
Let's just have this conversation now. Desmond Bane, 7K on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. He is 30% owned on both sites. I don't see the appeal at 30% ownership. This is a guy that I have projected a bit lower than the rest of the industry appears to have Desmond Bane projected. I don't really know what else I can change to make him look significantly more interesting. I don't mind the 7K price tag on DraftKings all that much. He does get the better eligibility on FanDuel, but a slight price bump. I am going to be light on Desmond Bane. I was the last time out. That did not work out. I just don't like Brooks being back.
I don't like Brooks being back, but I'm still getting a ton of Bane for, I think, a few reasons. One, on DraftKings, he's only shooting guard, but most of the guards that I want to play are only point guard. So it's not like the opportunity cost at the shooting guard spot's that high. Obviously, the actual guard position it is, but it just makes Bane stand out a little bit more there. He's also been extremely involved as a playmaker so far this year. May or may not continue, but like a 28% assist percentage, 10.5 potential assists per game is second best on the team behind Morant by like 3. So you have all of that. And then he's also just somebody that it's not surprising if he is more involved offensively this year. Last year, without Brooks on the floor, he had about a 24% usage rate, was around 20% with him on. His fantasy production was about the same because he was more efficient with Brooks out there. Not sure that's a long-term thing. It's probably just noise, but last game he had like a 32% usage rate even with Brooks back. For the season, he's at 27, 28%. I think you just see him take a step forward, at least for as long as Jaren Jackson Jr. is out, and play a bigger role this year. Then, again, he's had the ball in his hands more. He's getting more assist opportunities. And then on FanDuel, he has a fair price point and also has that forward eligibility in addition to shooting guard. So I'm getting around like 75% right now on DraftKings. I'm getting like 40% on FanDuel. It does kind of scare me. Like I was talking to you about it before the show. Typically, my highest owned guys are not mid-range players because there's normally guys around them that are similar and that you can pivot to. But I just think this slate's kind of weird because, for one, there's not that many mid-range plays that I like or that I think are that comparable to Bane in terms of upside. And then also, the great matchup with the Kings. But also, it's just difficult to go stars and scrubs on this slate. So it does push those mid-range guys up a little bit more for me than normal.
So, here's a question for you. Obviously, you prefer Desmond Bane to Tyler Hero at 7,500. How big of a gap do you have between Bane's projection and Hero's projection? Because Hero's at about half of the ownership.
Which site?
I'm going to go FanDuel for right now, but if it's applicable on DraftKings, go for it. I just see that they're next to each other. They're separated by $100. So to me, they're the same thing.
I have Bane by 4 points.
Okay, I have them as equals. And that's where the breakdown starts to happen for me.
Yeah, and that makes sense. We just have very different projections on Bane. So I think that based on the numbers that I'm using, I'm getting the lineups that I want, even though it scares me. And based on the numbers you're using, you shouldn't be playing as much Bane as the field.
Yeah.
So I think basically you are not buying into anything that has happened at all this year. And I might be buying in a little bit too heavily, but that's, I think, where the gap is.
I think it's all assist rate, really. 11% 2 years ago, 14% last season, 27% on the year so far. Where that stabilizes will be very interesting. He has cut his turnovers a little bit as well. He's always a 40% three-point shooter. Look, I have him at 1.1 FanDuel points per minute. I think that's good. I think he's good. I think he looks solid for his projection. I'm just really surprised to see him be so aggressively owned. I'm getting to more Aldama, Adams. I'm actually getting to Brooks at 5K on FanDuel at shooting guard, small forward. How are you handling the rest of Memphis?
So kind of surprised I'm not getting to more Dillon Brooks. I'm only getting 6% right now. I thought I'd get more just because he played 24 minutes last game. I think he's a good play. He played 24 minutes last game, probably going to play, a few more minutes here. Managed to get up 13 shots in his 24 minutes because that's what Dillon Brooks does. He made 2 of them because that also is what Dillon Brooks does. But all you're really asking for at that price point is opportunity. So I do think he's a pretty good play. I'm guessing I didn't get much more just because of ownership. He is getting 17% ownership, so probably a little bit over-owned. On FanDuel, I got around 10%. I'm getting a decent amount of John Conchar right now. He is questionable, but also projected for 5% ownership at 4,400 on DraftKings. So I'm getting 15 to 20% of him. If he plays, you're talking about somebody that's still likely to play, mid to upper 20s, averages around 0.85 DraftKings points per minute at very little ownership. So I like that. Aldama looks good to me. Getting 30% of him on DraftKings, getting around 10% on FanDuel. The minute should still be there for him. He looks like a pretty good value. Steven Adams, I think, looks good. He's my highest owned center on FanDuel right now at 47%. Same. I'm getting 12% on DraftKings. One thing that is interesting on DraftKings, I'm getting 26% Brandon Clark. I did set a rule so that I don't get Clark and Adams together because they typically aren't going to share the floor. But Clark's just another guy. He's coming off the bench. He's a good point per minute guy. He's going to need Steven Adams to get in foul trouble or for Memphis' second unit to just earn more playing time. But at 4,200, I really like the upside that Clark gives. And then he also has power forward eligibility.
So I was really surprised. I'm going to ask you that question. We've got Tyus Jones and Brandon Clark at 17% ownership on both. I'd be a little bit more interested in Jones, I think, but I was really surprised to see 16% ownership going to Brandon Clark on FanDuel. I get the positional eligibility and stuff. I just feel like there's got to be better value out there. There's only one path to that for him, right? Other than your clear outlier game where things break in 18 minutes. He's
For
just not
Clark?
out there. Right? Yeah, like there is only one path to that.
Yeah, so I'm barely getting any on FanDuel, and I'm getting 2x the field on DraftKings. But I think like a big difference is FanDuel. You have $3,900 Norman Powell,
Yeah.
so I'm just using him as a value piece in a lot of lineups. And then you have some other guys that are really cheap. Whereas DraftKings, the pricing is just a lot tighter, so it's difficult to find cheap guys that. We haven't mentioned a single cheap guy on DraftKings that we don't have a question mark about. There is no Josh Richardson on this slate. There is no Norman Powell from 2 days ago that was just going to get jammed into every lineup. So, those question marks, those value plays don't exist on DraftKings, whereas they do more so on FanDuel, because not only do you have Norman Powell, but like, for example, Kyle Lowry is $700 less expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. You have just spots like that where you end up just not needing to gamble on somebody like Brandon Clark, who is getting some ownership.
Kevin Brunson had a super chat. FanDuel question: Bane and Zubac or PG and Steven Adams? That would be PG and Adams for me.
Yeah, like I think both combinations are fine, but based on the fact that right now on FanDuel, Paul George is my second highest owned player and Steven Adams is my seventh, I think I'm going that route.
All right. Let's close it out with Sacramento.
Hang on. What did you say about Tyus Jones? Because I had forgotten to mention him, and I heard you say something.
Oh, nothing. Just that I would rather get to him over Clark, given the ownership on FanDuel.
Okay,
I'm not really getting to much of either.
So on DraftKings, I have like 22% Jones and 26% Clark.
Okay. That feels like so much, but I haven't run anything for DraftKings, so I have no reference point. Let's have the Keegan Murray discussion. 5,500 on DK, stepping into the starting lineup. I gave him 35 minutes. He's 5,200 on FanDuel. He is 30% owned on DK and 40% owned on FanDuel. I'm having trouble getting there, and I do have him projected pretty well. At least I think that I do. I'm shocked to see this ownership.
I'm not. He has MPE. He's cheap. He's 5,500 on DraftKings, which really stands out just because of how tight the pricing is there today. On FanDuel, he's 5,200 with small forward, power forward eligibility. So two positions where you don't have a lot that you're trying to pay up for, and taking that $5,200 price tag is pretty nice. He's averaged around 0.75 to 0.8 fantasy points per minute during the regular season this year, about a fantasy point per minute if you include the preseason. He's coming off of a game where he played 38 minutes, started the second half. We know he's starting tonight. Obviously playing alongside De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis isn't going to be good for your usage or assist opportunities, but Harrison Barnes isn't a high usage guy. Kevin Huerter is not a high usage guy. There is a nice, role I think to be carved out here for Keegan Murray, and he just fits really easily into lineups.
I just feel like he's getting steamed because he's a rookie and it's fun.
I think that's entirely possible also.
Like, if you just say he's a $5,200 to $5,500 0.75 guy, or even if you want to say like 0.8, that's like 40% ownership on FanDuel is crazy for that sort of baseline. Like, is he like, I don't want to have this conversation, but we have to do it. Do you want to have 40% owned Keegan Murray on FanDuel or 10% owned Harrison Barnes on FanDuel?
So that's exactly where I was going to go. Obviously my answer
is Barnes has been awful.
Well, obviously my answer is Keegan Murray because I have 72% of him and 7% of Barnes. But it's just one of those spots to me where if somebody offered you 4 or 5 to 1 odds, you would take Harrison Barnes. But I also have Keegan Murray projected like 7 points higher than Harrison Barnes. So I'm just going to end up playing a hell of a lot more Keegan Murray because I'm not building lineups just based around 1v1 leverage plays. Murray, sure. I'm trying to play the best lineups I can in terms of lineups that are going under-owned and lineups that project well. And even with the ownership coming into Murray and the fact that I do think he is going a bit over-owned, he's just still showing up in 3/4 of those lineups.
Yeah, I have them projected similarly on a per minute basis. I do have Keegan Murray by 2.1 fantasy points on FanDuel. So I do have Murray ahead of him, but that relationship and ownership is breaking my brain. I also would not be surprised if Keegan Murray comes in at 30% owned, and then all of this is sort of like a moot point for it all. But I just can't get behind 40%, and I don't really know why he's getting steamed so much, other than the fact that he's a rookie.
I mean, I think it's just that he projects for 6x.
I mean, I find a 6x projection to be lofty for this gentleman, and I like him too. That's the real problem here.
So the thing is, it sounds
I want
like
him
you
to
actually
succeed.
don't like him.
I do. That's the thing. I liked the pick
kind of
for the Kings.
Like Luka.
Okay, we're not doing this. That's not a real thing. You think that just because you buy his socks changes things?
They were gifted to me. I didn't buy them.
whatever.
Do you still have them though?
I would hope so. I mean, like, where would they have gone?
I mean, I lose socks at a ridiculous clip.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that you've just ruined those socks with the things that we do with socks, but what a weird way to land one on Luka. The Keegan Murray thing is crazy. I like Barnes at 10% ownership. Like, to me, that's a really interesting GPP play.
I agree with you there. You know, Barnes has been absolute dog shit this year from both a performance standpoint and an opportunity standpoint. 14% usage rate, not what you want. 42% true shooting, also not what you want. Is Harrison Barnes going to be this bad for the whole year? No. Is it a reasonable spot to, in a particular lineup, pivot? Sure. But it's just not, I'm not going to just, from an overall exposure standpoint, I'm not going to just decide that I'm jamming in Harrison Barnes instead of Keegan Murray today.
Like, I have 27% Barnes right now, which feels like a little bit of a stand, but I'm not like super upset about that. I still have like 20% Murray. So it's, again, not like I'm not getting there. It's just cutting it in half a bit. I like getting to Fox. I like getting to Sabonis. I've got like right around the field on both guys, 8,800 for Fox, 9K for Sabonis. Sabonis much more interesting. Well, Sabonis just a center on DraftKings, 8,200. Great price. Worst price on FanDuel, but you get the power forward. So he's sort of like the same guy on both sides, but I'm happy to get the Fox or Sabonis.
Yeah, I'm getting to a lot of them on FanDuel. So Keegan Murray is my highest owned guy on FanDuel. De'Aaron Fox is third. Domantas Sabonis is fourth. Or no, sorry, that's DraftKings. On FanDuel, Keegan is first. And then Fox is fifth. Sabonis is further down at like 16%. So I am having an easier time getting to them on DraftKings. De'Aaron Fox has been an absolute monster this year, both in terms of his production, which is going to come down, 68% true shooting, 1.5 DraftKings points per minute, but a 34.5% usage rate and a 34.5% assist percentage. Maybe those rates probably do come down just naturally anyway. And then also replacing KZ Okpala with Keegan Murray should also bring those rates down a bit. But his price hasn't really been adjusted for those rates. You're talking about like an $8,600 or $8,700 De'Aaron Fox. I really, really like getting to him a lot. I like getting to Sabonis at 8,200. I mentioned it earlier when we talked about Bam. There's not a lot of good centers on this slate. Sabonis is one of the few, and at 8,200, I do think he's a bit underpriced, averaging 1.25 DraftKings points per minute this year, doing his normal thing, 22.5% usage, 25.5% assist percentage, 17.7% rebounding percentage, just gets, does it all when he's out there. And so I do like getting him, particularly on DraftKings.
All righty. Anything else you want to add for this slate before we turn it over to the NBA Live Before Lock crew?
Nope.
All right. Well, then you got to give the people your favorite plays for today.
So if the slate started right now on DraftKings, my 5 highest owned guys would be Keegan Murray, Desmond Bane, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and a tie between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Santi Aldama.
The slate started right now on FanDuel, my 5 highest exposed guys, and that is exactly where I would draw the line, too. There's a gap between this. Norm Powell, Paul George, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, and Ben Simmons. It's going to be a fun one tonight, guys. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button one last time. We're up to 2,900 people, 430 likes. Let's get it up over 500 before the switch. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Enjoy, everybody. Good luck tonight.
Welcome. It's the 5 and 5. And yeah, what's going on here? No gimmicks, no pictures, nothing like that. We just want to take you behind the curtain, if you will. Or maybe it's just that I wanted to flood the screen with green as we did the Discord last night. Do you want to know what it looks like on a Discord text-only chat? You want to see the equivalent of somebody taking out that cash gun and just spraying? It was last night. This, by the way, was yesterday's 5 and 5, and we go 3 for 5, including our plus 600 Jalen Brunson double-double. Now, on the Discord below, and I'm going to tell you all about, there's a link right below where you can click on that, BetMGM. I'm going to tell you that in a second. This is me wetting your beak for tonight, another round of it, because, yeah, we go 3 for 5. We missed the top 2, but then we go 3 straight, including the plus 600. And on the Discord, you see we go 4 for 5 and 3-point props. You're not getting those anywhere else. You're just getting those on the Discord. So, busy night. Oh, by the way, we smashed a same-game parlay that I'm going to show you a little bit later as I entice you to join me on the Discord. So, no. This wasn't like me stripping the set down and having some sort of one-on-one heart-to-heart with you. This was me just flooding the entire set with green. As much green. Look, I can put cash signs up there. I can put some crazy costume on there. But no, we're just going to do this as simple as possible and have you thinking green. Green, green now. I don't care if it's Draymond green, if it's AC green. I don't care if it's a green screen. Whatever it is, we're cashing green tonight, 5 and 5. Let's hit the clock starting right now. We begin with a team in Dallas and a team in Brooklyn. Neither one of these squads have gone their entire games without one quarter of a massive meltdown. Now, to be fair, the Mavericks...
Jordan's upbeat today. That cat must be gone. I knew it. I knew it. I could tell her right away.
Yeah.
Everything was different. Jordan's
my life is so hard. I'm Jordan Klein. Shut up.
What is going on, everybody? It's time for another Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock show. Jordan Klein no longer has a cat attached to him, and I was able to point it out almost immediately because everything was different about Jordan. He's smiling for the first time in a week. His energy was different. Everything was better, and I said, that cat must be gone. Apparently it is. Jordan could not be more thrilled. We're also sponsored today by BetMGM. If you guys, while you come and do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, are you feeling the good vibes from Jordan with the cat gone?
I mean, I'm just glad that we actually have some screen share going on. It was about time. I was getting very sad yesterday. I couldn't see the top of his head for an hour and a half, and it was making me a little uncomfortable. You know what? I'll settle for 60 minutes of that goodness today.
Yeah, this is exciting. Jordan, our dear friend Jordan, he's been down in the dumps because this cat has been terrorizing him. And every time he sends us one of those pictures, it's just the cutest cat just sitting there sleeping, minding its own business. And Jordan's like, look at this. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody ever. This is, you guys think hunger and poverty and starvation is bad. Look what I'm dealing with. And
you know what that means? Jordan Klein doesn't like pussy.
Oh, that could be it. That could be it. Jordan, comment?
Just got bodied. Oh!
Well, the good thing is that Jordan came well prepared with the response when he put himself on mic there.
Good one, Jordan.
Sharp as attack, that Jordan Klein. Nobody quicker,
man.
But we also
reach for the sky.
God. Also coming in, something I could not have been more upset about. Paul George is going to play. I was expecting to play all day, but just the amount of energy, and I think that everybody would have enjoyed the overall reaction from Eric had Paul George gotten rolled out in the middle of the show. It would have been tremendous, but unfortunately we've been robbed of that because Paul George is going to be healthy today. But I've been projecting all day as if Paul George was going to play. It seemed like you were as well based on our brief talks before we started. So what do we make of Paul George being in today?
We make there kind of be an uncomfortable lack of value on this slate, I think is the right way of putting it. We're all putting our eggs into the Keegan Murray basket, or so it would seem. We have very little to be working with. This reminds me of like a 2018 or 2019 NBA DFS slate where you roster a bunch of really uncomfortable 4-5x type guys. Very different from DFS slates we've had for the last 2 years where pricing hasn't been very sharp. So shout out to the sites for legitimately making it something where we have to think. We can't just blindly click on guys. We're going to be making cases for guys that are going to be very low owned. I think it brings a lot of bench rotational players into play that we just don't always have to roster on these slates, but it makes a 4-gamer really, really fun.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing about it is that there's just not that much injury news, which really inhibits the amount of value. This is the least amount of injury news we've had on any slate so far this year. So we had even, some other slates, like we had the 4-game slate, was it on Tuesday? But there was just a shit ton of players out where we had all of the value in the world to pay up for Luka on that slate. Today, totally different. Luka projects, and here's actually a kind of a good barometer for how different a DFS slate could be from just a couple days ago. I've Luka projected very similarly today that I did 2 days ago. But 2 days ago, Eric, you and I were playing a ton of Luka. It's fairly difficult to pay up for Luka today. And his price is about the same. His projection for me is about the same. It's just harder to get him into lineups because of the pricing constrictions.
Yep. It makes it really fun. I enjoy these kind of slates more because people still condense around chalk plays. And there's one chalk play in Keegan Murray that I'm not going to fade, but I feel pretty confident that there are paths to failure for a lot of other people on this slate. I mean, we're looking at Kevin Harter, 20.5% ownership right now. We got the starting lineup, Paul George in it there. Powell's continuing to start, so that's interesting. We have Miami, where they come off of a game where nobody played over 30 minutes because of a blowout, but that kind of brings everybody into play where you might have seen Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo or some meaningful rotation player. Kyle Lowry for sure could have been resting on the back-to-back if it wasn't a glorified gym run that they had last night. We're looking at Kenrich Williams at 3,800. I mean, these are some uncomfortable type pieces of value. And if you want Luka, you got to go get him, but you better be surrounding him with things. It's just a beautiful slate, I think.
By the way, I'm hardly getting to Luka. I'm looking through my
lineups. I have 8%
right
now. It is not fun.
Yeah, and I mean, we could start by talking about that. And also, this is something that's different FanDuel versus DraftKings. I do find it easier to get to him on FanDuel just because the pricing, by and large part, is softer over on FanDuel. So we'll talk about the difference on Luka, FanDuel versus DraftKings. But starting on DK, it seems like we're both on the same page here. I would love to play Luka, but there's salary constraints. So how scared are you about not getting to a lot of Luka? And is it anything that you've forcefully tried to change?
No, I'm not going to probably change it. I think I'm going to probably end up in the mid-range quite a bit. I think SGA 9,300 is just going to show up a lot for me as a pay up. I think I'm going to be paying up a lot for Kevin Durant. The other thing that I've been thinking about a lot is just positionally, where are a lot of these chalk plays? Well, Keegan Murray is 5,500. I have a rule that I don't know if I've ever gone through and done something like this. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think it makes a lot of sense where I want to get to some Kevin Durant as a spend up. They're coming off of a really, losing in Milwaukee isn't that big of a deal, but they're 1-4. They are really treading water right now. Kevin Durant, this is like I don't want to call it a must win because it's early in the season. And I do think Dallas should be favored in this spot, but like, if you're Kevin Durant, you're going to go out and do everything you can to try to get this on the right track. You could see him playing even a couple more minutes in a spot like tonight, getting 2 days of rest than the next two. Kevin Durant at 10K is a guy that I think if I'm going to be reaching up for something uncomfortable, he's 15% on a 4-game slate. And I do think that there's a path where we just see him play more minutes, just trying to get the W. Like 42 minutes is something that I think could be in play if this game stays close tonight, and it should because of a 2-point spread.
Yeah. So in terms of Kevin Durant, by the way, I have him. I don't get to him a lot on DraftKings either. I'm just finding it hard to spend up for a lot of guys on DK. I'm getting more to some of the secondary stars. I'd say the secondary star I'm getting to the most today, if we still consider him that, is Bam Adebayo. That's kind of been status quo for me as of late. Generally hasn't gone well, if we're being honest, but Bam is still somebody that I'm pretty high on going forward. But let's also talk about the FanDuel side of it when it comes to Luka, because he is way easier to get to over on FanDuel. So on DraftKings, where I hardly got to him at all in my build, over on FanDuel, I actually get to around 40% of him just because the pricing is so much softer over there. It's easier to get him into lineups. How does Luka look different for you on FanDuel as compared to DK?
Yeah, I'm not playing FanDuel because I've got NFL Showdown lineups. I've got a video to put together. I've got 2 videos to put together tonight. I've just thought of that now. Jordan Klein, baseball. We got to record baseball. Just reminding you. Love you. But Luka over on FanDuel, just between the sites, I mean, it makes sense. You get the $3,500 floor, and then when you're going to get him at the exact same number, that's going to be a lot easier to attain. I do think FanDuel still has softer pricing than what DK does for today's purposes. I don't know if you agree with that. Just looking at it right now, 5,800 Ben Simmons. Good Lord, I'm so happy I'm not playing it over on FanDuel today. Oh boy, I would have a lot of him. But I think FanDuel makes sense to get to Luka, and that's why you want to be playing multiple sites. I just don't really have the opportunity tonight.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And the other day, by the way, when we were doing the show together on the Tuesday, I was playing, for whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to play every 150 lineups in every single slate on DraftKings, just because I was like, I wonder how this will go. So it was like, I'm doing all the showdown slates, I'm going to play on FanDuel. I'm going to play on DraftKings. I was like, oh, this was a horrific decision. It was a lot. It was a lot to manage during the show, and I was like, I'm not going to do that again. That was a dumb way to spend some money.
Yeah, but don't do that, people. Don't do that.
Well, if you're somebody who maybe isn't trying to do a live show, entering lineups in a million different contests at once, but I'd started the year, I was running really hot in NBA. I was like, I should be playing a lot more volume right now. I was like, and then I realized afterwards, it was a really dumb way to just give away a lot of my profits from the first few games of the season. So we live and learn.
Good job, good effort. Good job, good effort.
Live and learn with what my capabilities are while hosting a show. Also, did you see? I retweeted this before. PointsBet, did you see what they paid out anybody who bet the under for the Lakers win total?
I did. 44.5 win total.
I just thought that was hilarious to see it. They're like, hey, guess what? It's already a win. There's no way the Lakers are getting to 45
it's October.
46 wins.
It's October. Think about that. It's October. Also, yeah, it seems a little bit early. There's a lot of drastic stuff that could happen. I mean, Russell Westbrook would still be a draw somewhere else. I got to think, like a small market team that just wants to eat it for a year or two. If the Lakers eat up some of that salary, they can trade him wherever. But I guess it doesn't really always work that way because you got to get something back that's comparable in return in the NBA. You can't just unload, I don't know, something like we're seeing in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, his salary worked out really well where it was front loaded, where next year is when he's starting to get paid. So San Francisco, if they're willing to take that on, awesome. But different rules you have to abide by in the NBA.
Yeah. And remember the ridiculousness too. And this is what happens when there's just delusional fans on Twitter. We're like, oh, you know what's going to happen? Russell Westbrook will get traded for Kyrie Irving because that's something that for some reason people thought would interest the Nets. Not the case.
Yeah, that's a no from me, dog.
Yeah, it was a no from everybody except for Lakers fans on Twitter. Let's talk about the other guards, because you and I, we're both finding it a little bit difficult to get to Luka, at least as far as DraftKings is concerned. So who are the guards that you are prioritizing tonight?
That I'm prioritizing? Yes. I will say at the guard position, there's not really. I'm pretty spread out for the most part. I think Desmond Bane is chalk, and I wouldn't call him good chalk. He's up to 7K. Dylan Brooks back, John Morant, but it's a great game environment. 236 total. I think it's fine. I'm just not going to be over or under the field. I'm at 32% right now. So what, 2% over as it stands? I bet he ends up being a little bit more popular than that. I'm getting to Ben Simmons, talked about him, point guard, small forward, 6,400. I think on DK, where it's only half a point for turnovers, you get the triple double bonus. God forbid he does not go over 7.5 points. It's even money on DraftKings.com today. Just throwing it out there.
Well, it was plus 115 before the show started. It is getting steam towards the under.
Oh my God. The under was just getting slammed and I went the other way because I refuse to believe that he isn't going to get like 2 steals one game, and one somewhere. I mean, he definitely has the yips. Like, that's not a word I should be saying as a golfer, but there's definitely a yip-like mentality to the way he's playing basketball right now. But at 7.5, it is impossible for me not to like the over there. But that's kind of like my main stand, is just getting to a lot of him more than the field at the moment. I mean, he's right around 22%. I have 40%. Whatever. I'm just kind of investing into that bucket. Gives me some outs still, but I am so spread out amongst everybody. I mean, I'm playing guys like Tyus Jones because it's that kind of a slate. I think he makes a lot of sense for a value play at 4,600. Jordan Poole, sub 6K. Yeah, against Miami, that's not the best situation, but I think Jordan Poole's going to have some massive games here in the future where he could just spike some upside shooting. I wish he was less popular than 18.6%, but I'm still thinking that, like, well, considering there's no value, you might as well go to the mid-range for a guy who could just go get you buckets and win you a tournament.
Yeah, and by the way, one other thing on Ben Simmons, I think the biggest thing is I don't know how healthy his back is. He had the back surgery in the offseason. Initially, there was some question whether he would play or not because he had tweaked his back. I'm with you, though. I'm still playing him for the upside today on DraftKings, FanDuel. I think he makes sense on both sites. Hard to feel great about it because it's Ben Simmons and he's off to a terrible start this year and just hasn't looked great. I mean, if we look at his numbers so far this year, he's taking 5 shot attempts per game and he's making 45% of them, averaging 5.3 points per game. Not ideal. The assists and the rebounds are still there for him. The defensive stats are still there for him. It's just, will he start taking more shots? At his price, I'm willing to take a chance on the upside. So it's a yes for me. And I agree with you also. I think as far as the points prop is concerned, it makes sense to take a look at the over on that as well. Once again, Should you feel great about a bet that everybody's on the other side of? No, but it's pretty clearly where I think the value is, because Ben Simmons, despite all of his career and the difficulty, at least the narrative around him with him as a scorer, he's never averaged less than 14 points per game in a season. He averages 15.8 for his career. He's probably not as bad as he's played so far this year, unless he's just totally washed.
Yep, totally there with you.
Okay, we got a super chat here from Jorge Giacomi. Who will be your top value player for DK and expensive player?
Keegan Murray. I just have to play Keegan Murray a lot.
Yeah. So let's do this in tiers, I guess, because it's hard to know like what constitutes value for me. Same page, Keegan Murray. I love Keegan Murray is the player of the most exposure to today. So Keegan Murray, one of the top picks in the draft, appears to have a very fantasy-friendly game, does a little bit of everything: score, rebound, assist, defensive stats, and the minutes. He played 38 minutes last game, so it seems like his playing time is going to be very significant. So Keegan Murray, by the way, we were talking about bets. I bet Keegan Murray this morning over 4.5 rebounds. Seemed like a fairly crazy low total was his prop when that number first opened. But Keegan Murray, I'm with you. But let's also say Keegan Murray in the mid-range. Is there any punt play that you're getting to a lot today?
Yeah, well, pure punt, Kenrich Williams.
So we'll say sub 4K, I guess.
Yeah, Kenrich Williams is about the only one that you're going to feel any sort of way about. I feel pretty awful about it, but I got to make a stand with somebody down there. I have 13% of him at sub 4K. Otherwise, almost everybody in my lineups is sitting above that threshold.
Oh, you're going to hate this one. So I'm looking through my lineups right now.
I said, I'm excited for this slate because I haven't built out. I did a couple of crunches, a couple hours ago, just kind of looking at what I was going to get to, fixing up some projections. But like, I want to be talked into some players. Like Darius Bazley is like outwardly bad at 16.7% ownership, but there's some other guys that I think we could talk about and find something down here at the bottom and win some money.
I'm getting Aaron Wiggins in some lineups.
I like that play.
He took 14 shots last game, and it's funny because we were talking. I don't remember
after the show.
I can't remember.
He was in the 100K winning lineup for Steve Buzzard, and you and I were just like, I was like, why am I getting to Aaron Wiggins now? And I took him out of everything, and I
couldn't remember if it was a conversation we had on the show or after the show, but we're looking at Aaron Wiggins and be like, oh, he's starting, but he sucks. And then of course Steve wins 100K, and that was the value play he had in that lineup. But I mean, the big thing to me with Wiggins, he played 28 minutes. He lost playing time due to garbage time because the game was a blowout, and he took 14 shots. The peripheral stats for him, they've never been great in the past, but he's been a guy who could get some rebounds here and there. It's the defensive stats. He had 3 steals and a block last game. But if he's going to take 14 shots at his price point, it at least makes him viable. So he's the guy sub 4K that I'm getting the most exposure to.
Well, yeah. And I mean, in terms of minutes, like you're going to project somebody for 25 minutes on this slate and they can maybe get you a bucket, they're going to be in play. Like that's the kind of day that it is. So Aaron Wiggins, I think that's fine. Once again, should you feel good about anything down there? No, but he's lower owned than Darius Bazley. And for me, that's like where I draw the line in the sand. And I used to be just a Bazley stan. And there were some times last year where I could still get there, but he's just so bad. 3,700 coming off the bench. I refuse to be going there when he's playing around 19, 20 minutes and have him be somebody who's in 16.7% of my lineup. So if he goes nuts, I will not win today. Just know that.
And then we have the other part of the question was, who's our favorite expensive player on the slate? That is Domantas Sabonis for me.
Whoa, look at you. I think that correlates. So one of the things about Keegan Murray out there, you get him, Fox, Malik Monk. There's been some really, Kevin Huerter. They all have pretty darn good assist rates. And Keegan Murray hasn't really seen the usage spike yet. He's been sub 20% now in both of the games that he's played so far this season. He shot it pretty efficiently, but like, I do expect his usage to go up as he gets acclimated. He obviously had some COVID bouts or something where he was sick for a while and got back out there, and he's come off the bench playing massive minutes. I don't know if you see any more minutes for him in the starting unit, but the nice thing where I don't think his upside is really capped is Domantas Sabonis can just get there in a multitude of ways. He has 10.5 for a rebound prop. We've got Keegan Murray we've got Domantas Sabonis with the amount of assists that he can put up on any given night as well. It's just kind of a fun Kings team in general. Fox averaging 7 assists now early going. Domantas Sabonis right around 5.5 per game. So I do like that shout out. 24% for him. You get a little bit of the savings off some of the other top end studs. He's 8,200. I mean, there's one center I like a lot more than him, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and then the other thing too about this Kings lineup is really fun. This starting five: Fox, Herter, Barnes, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis. It's small. It's a pretty fast lineup. I do wonder if they're going to end up playing guys like Steven Adams and Santi Aldama off the court today, because it's an interesting contrast of styles. The total is massive in this game, 236 the last I looked. So a lot of scoring is expected to be involved. That also makes me want to play guys like Sabonis and Keegan Murray even more. It's a very strong game to stack in the last game of the slate. But for you, Eric, who's your favorite pay up option per Jorge's question?
Favorite pay up option for me is SGA.
Okay.
So he's 24%. I will say I'm paying close attention to what that ownership's going to be, but 9,300, he's going to have to do everything for this basketball team. We see the assist rate go through the moon without Josh Giddey. We've seen that for a year and a half now. We have the opportunity for him to go out and shoot. I mean, he hasn't attempted fewer than 20 shot attempts all season long. I don't expect that to change. He's just dynamic. He can get things done. The only thing he doesn't really have for a guy who's on the court as much as what he is any kind of a rebound rate. That's where, you're talking about the double doubles through assists. Perhaps he can get there, but not a very likely chance. Whereas like a guy like Domantas Sabonis, you can almost lock him in considering his rebound prop is 10.5. Like that is the one thing where you're getting Sabonis for a little bit cheaper, and that makes sense. But I like Zubac so much today that I'm just getting to him so much at the center position that it's hard for me to find a ton of Sabonis as a pay up when I can use that money elsewhere in my lineups, and it's going towards SGA right now.
Makes sense. I could follow that for sure. A few more super chats coming in. A follow-up from Jorge. Forgot to say thanks for the amazing content as always, guys. And also, would you set a player limit per team? Not for a 4-game slate.
No. Standard. I mean, you don't want to have 5 or 6. I would say even 4. I mean, I could go through and just tell you how many I have with 4. I haven't set any kind of a parameter there. Maybe I should, but doesn't look like I'm getting to any 3's the most I'm getting anywhere. If you're trying to just like hand build and force in some game stacks or something on a 4-gamer, obviously there's enough value pieces-ish from the Memphis Sacramento one where that makes a lot of sense for it. Clippers OKC, if you're going to take some of those OKC value pieces and you can kind of stab at the closing lineup like they've had for the last couple games. But for the most part, not something I'm even consciously aware of, because salary, ownership, all of that stuff matters a lot more than me like worrying about overlap, because it's not going to happen on the expensive end.
Yeah, I have lineups that are 4 players from Sacramento, 3 from Memphis. I do find that to be a really good game to game stack.
Yeah.
I don't have any more with 4 from one team, but I don't mind getting to like 4 and 3 from that final.
Was that game. You didn't put any kind of like a rule to force in a game stack there though, did you?
No. It just kind of happened.
Yep.
I did actually make a group though where it would boost some of the players when they're together to kind of try to influence the game.
Yeah, I did that with SGA the other night with how much Clippers value there was, where we just kind of boosted. I said if I had 3 Clippers in a lineup, I made him the key player, and I said minimum 3 with it. And again, it's kind of fun. Like I don't really ever do that many groups or any for NBA, but I think there's a couple of routes to build to kind of cut down on the riffraff on a day like today or a day like that was where SGA was a necessity. Feel like that's kind of made NBA really fun for just our second week of it.
There's a reason why I did that also. So when there's a slate, and every NBA slate is different. It's individual. They're not all the same, and there's different strategies to try to find upside. But for me, at least when I was looking at it, there aren't that many cheap guys I really like, and it's kind of hard to find points per dollar upside from that standpoint. But this is where I think one of the ways you could find upside, even if it doesn't exist at first glance, is if you're getting players from the same game and it's really high pace, there's extra possessions. So that was why I tried to boost the projections for players in the same game, because I think this game has a chance to shoot out. And then that could just be the nuts where later on in the day, it's like, oh yeah, the final score of this game was, 130 to 125, which some Kings games have been recently. That Kings game against the Warriors the other day, did you see what the score was at halftime?
I saw it was like 70-ish something. Wob had a tweet out about it. I can't remember exactly what it was.
So at halftime, yeah, I wouldn't know because he's blocked on my account. But
stop it. He's a good dude.
I think it was 91 to 77 or 91 to 79 at halftime. Just bonkers scoring. And if the game wasn't a blowout, probably could have kept going on that trend. I think we could see that with some Kings games this year, and with Warriors games, I guess as well, just because they could score so quickly at any point in time.
The other thing is you don't really need it to even like shoot out. If it meets expectations and every other game meets expectations, you're still getting 9-10 points. You're probably getting 5-6 more possessions than every other spot on the board. So like you just need it to kind of be what it is in order to have it slammed. So like that's going to happen a lot, I think, with a lot of these Sacramento games. I think we're going to be looking at a lot of late night hammers going forward this season, and not because of Golden State pricing, I can tell you that much.
Next super chat is from Corey Randall. He wants to know Herter, Royce O'Neal, or Covington. That is Herter for me.
Kevin Herter.
Shout out.
He's
to
volatile. But I mean, that's the thing too. Like the other pieces are just so bad. At least we have like, I have 24 and a half projected for Herter. You go to like Royce O'Neal. I get it. But if you're telling me building out one lineup and one kind of one deal there, like I have to go with him, even though if you have a chalkier lineup, Royce O'Neal is 5-6% less, just a 1.5 difference in projection, but gonna have a lot more pieces of that late night game.
Yeah, and also shout out to Jorge, just gifted a bunch of memberships out in the YouTube channel. We appreciate it, and thank you guys for all of the support. Always cool to see when we get the super chats and different stuff, like people gifting memberships. Another super chat here from Gray Haired Gaming. Fox averaging 6x on DK, and it should be a pace up spot. Yes, it should be. Are you over or under on Fox? Let's see. What is our current projected ownership for him?
I am under on Fox right now.
I am over. I'm over on a lot of players in that game.
I get it. Again, that's a good spot to kind of hang your hat, but the Shea thing for me is just where De'Aaron Fox, Ja Morant, they're all going to be pretty popular, but the Shea thing, he's going to have to do everything for that game to be competitive in any way, shape, or form. I think he has a clearer path to just a smash, but on a 4-game slate, maybe I'm overthinking that a little bit.
I mean, it's not like there are bad players in other games or anything like that. I just said the way that I had situated my lineups, where I was giving players boosts when they were going to be together in the group I made in Fantasy Country. It just made for me getting to a ton of exposure to that game, which I'm totally cool with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, we are caught up on super chats. Shout out to BetMGM, the sponsor of today's show. And here's why you guys should be signing up at BetMGM if you haven't already. You click on the link below, and then when you place a $10 money line bet on any NBA game tonight, it pays out $200 as long as a 3-pointer hit in the game. It is easy money. I've done much more difficult things for $200, Eric. I've done just the worst things for $200.
Under the bridge downtown.
Well, now we're digging into D-Mac's childhood. But $200, you have to do nothing. All you're doing is clicking on a link. You're placing a $10 bet over at BetMGM on any. It has to be an NBA money line, and it's going to pay out $200 as long as the team hits a 3. What's the worst thing you would do for $200?
No comment. I like my job.
Fair. Did you ever? Because I've done some. The honest answer for me, I'm just kind of thinking through. I did some horrific comedy gigs when I didn't have money, and like I remember anytime I was getting like more than $100 for a comedy gig, I thought it was like the craziest thing ever. Did you have any acting gigs like that where they just totally sucked, but you took them anyway? Because
like Children's Party, like Prince Eric thing or another. Like I'm pretty sure I did something like that back in the day where you just had different things like that, different gigs that would show up. I remember doing this web series that was like for $80 that we shot in the most dingy place in Hollywood Boulevard, and we kept getting interrupted by this homeless guy on sound, and they kept having to cut over and over and over again. And it was like what should have been a 2-hour shoot turned into 12 hours and 4 a.m. on Hollywood Boulevard. It was not enjoyable.
I used to run a variety show at a comedy club called Creek in the Cave. And we did a little bit of everything. It was stand-up comedy. We did live sketches. We did pre-recorded stuff, and we did the show for like 2 hours. And it was a really fun show. There's a little bit of everything. And we would get big name comics would come and would headline and close out and do like 20, 30 minutes at the end. But we had one time, there was a guy who was really drunk in the audience who saw it and he really liked the show. And he asked us if we would perform at his wife's birthday party that was upcoming. And I don't remember how old she was turning, but he was somebody who's willing to pay a lot. He gave us $500 was what he said he was willing to pay, which was a ton to us at the time. Like we're all young comedians, us in the sketch group. So we end up taking the gig. We show up at this party. There's no microphone. There's no stage. He's just like, all right, just go do a sketch.
That's anxiety inducing.
Which anybody who knows anything about entertainment, it's just the worst possible scenario. So we're trying to do this sketch that we had done before on shows, and nobody's paying attention. People are drinking. They can't hear us because there's no microphone or anything. It was a total disaster. But the guy was so drunk, actually both times we saw him, that he was like, oh, that was great, and just paid us. It couldn't have bombed harder. Nobody gave a shit.
Dude, that gives me so much anxiety. I will say, because I've gotten to be friends with a lot of comedy club people, a lot of people on Sunset, Laugh Factory, Comedy Store, all the spots. I used to just go to shows on Monday, Tuesday nights back when I didn't have a job and I had moved out here, 12 years ago now, 11 years ago. When I was 23, I moved out to LA and I got to be friends with a lot of the comedians. And I will say the most uncomfortable feeling in the entire world is watching somebody bomb. Like it's just, there's nothing that can happen. You love watching bombing. You would love watching people bomb. For me, it's like watching certain episodes of The Office, and you're just like, I can't do it next episode. Just got to skip it.
Because I used to run a lot of different comedy shows. If one of my friends was bombing, like we would all gather ourselves, like me and my friends, we would go sit in the back of the room to watch it and then give them feedback afterwards. Like we'd record it, and it was the best. Dude, anyway, the point being is, the much easier way to make $200 is you sign up at BetMGM by clicking on the link below in the description box. Next super chat here for my filler arc. As the last spot in, would you rather be on Hero or Bane? I think I don't really understand how this is worded, but I think the question is Hero or Bane. I prefer Bane today.
Bane. There's, once again, ownership must be factored into such decisions.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's cash or GPP, but just I have more exposure to Bane. It's Bane in general. Michael McKinney. No one cared who I was until I put on the mask.
All right, that was better.
Michael McKinney. 5 must plays for FanDuel cash. All right, let me look at the lineups that I've made for FanDuel. Keegan Murray, easy. People are going to hate this, but Ben Simmons is another answer. Ben Simmons, for FanDuel cash purposes, he's going to be super popular. He's $5,800. He's one of the guys. Sorry if you hate that, but it's the answer. Luka is going to be another one.
Jimmy Butler, probably, as I'm looking at it.
Yes, Jimmy Butler is also massively popular and is in a bunch of my lineups. So we've got 4 right now. And the final one, I'd probably still say Bane again, actually.
Yeah. Probably.
I know he's pricey on FanDuel at $7,400, but he's going to be popular. He's good eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. He's playing a bunch of minutes. Usage is high this year. Steals, so the defensive stats, assists, rebounds. I think there's a really high floor for Desmond Bane, so that's my other answer.
I know this is probably disturbing, but like value piece wise, I mean, you're playing Ben Simmons, you're playing Keegan Murray. Caleb Martin probably ends up in your lineup too.
I think, wasn't he the first person I said?
Oh yeah, he was. Sorry.
Yeah. If I forgot to say Keegan Murray for sure.
No, I'm just a dick, and I just wasn't listening at that moment.
All good. So getting back to some of the guards for this slate, is there anybody who's important to your lineups we've not yet talked about as far as point guards and shooting guards are concerned?
Not really. Again, there's just a very spread out approach. I'm playing 200 lineups, and I'm just getting to a lot of these guys as tournament options in some of these spots. Kyle Lowry's really popular coming off of yesterday. He played pretty well. Trey Mann is really popular coming out of yesterday. I'm a little bit lower on them, 17 and 11. Right now we have Trey Mann at 24% on DK. And then Kyle Lowry, 11.6%. I would rather just take that ownership. They're already uncomfortable plays. I'm just kind of spreading it to the rest of the range. I know Malik Monk does not project out well, but I'm overweight to him on 2.8%. John Wall is a drastically worse play with Paul George in now, but he's still just going to have all the usage you would expect. Reggie Jackson won't be out there. Willing participant in the shooting department, I will say. He won't be chucking as much without or with Paul George back in the reins there. But John Wall gets that second unit, and that should be enjoyable to watch. So I'm overweight to that one too. Lots of players that just at guard, I said that whole 4 to 6K range on DK. Jordan Poole, the one that I'm getting to the absolute most there, but he's already at 18.6%. That's just a guy that I think when he gets it going, you just want to have him in lineups when he's sub 6K. So I do expect that he's going to have those kind of games. So at least with him, as opposed to other players in the range, I know what that ceiling looks like.
Yeah, we've got a question here. This also is going to pertain to Desmond Bane. If Dillon Brooks starts tonight, does that hurt Desmond Bane? It kind of hurts everybody on that team to a small extent because Dillon Brooks takes a lot of shots when he's out on the court. But with that said, Dillon Brooks, even if he is starting today, which I think is going to be the case, I don't expect him to play full minutes. He started in the last game as well, but played 24. I think they're going to be cautious bringing him back. I think like 26 minutes or so, 28 at most is probably a reasonable expectation for Dillon Brooks. Does it hurt? Yes. But it's not a death sentence because Brooks is still going to be somewhat limited.
Yeah, Dillon Brooks thinks Dillon Brooks is the best basketball player on the team, and that's not good when you have John Morant on your team.
Yeah, but at least for now, the limited minutes. So
correct.
That not quite the end of the world, especially on a 4-game slate where that game is so much higher scoring, at least in terms of the projected total relative to other spots.
Yep.
Malcolm Revamp, who are the must-haves for DK cash now? All right, DraftKings cash. So the same question we got before for FanDuel, but for DK. Keegan Murray, once again, for sure.
Lock.
Desmond Bane is going to be another one.
Yep, lock.
Boy, it's tough. The ownership is so much flatter on DraftKings and FanDuel. There's so many guys projected, like right around 20% ownership.
Yeah, I will say, I think what you're probably doing in cash there is you're playing two centers. The double-double opportunity. I think Zubac is playing enough minutes and Domantas Sabonis. I think I probably say Sabonis and Zubac in a cash capacity. Generally, back in the day of yore, like back when I played a lot of cash, 2017, 2018 NBA, one of the things you do is you just play two centers from the mid-range. Almost every cash night was a two-center night because you'd get some sort of value there. And the times when they double-double over the course of an entire season, it just paid out in a more prominent way. You don't get guards and forwards that necessarily rebound at the same rate. And then with multi-positional eligibility, you can play them in multiple spots. So a lot of times it ended up being center and flex spot that were centers. I think this is kind of an old school slate. I think it's probably Zubac and Sabonis for me.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me as well. I mean, Sabonis, I mentioned before, he's personally my favorite pay-up option on the slate. So it would make sense as well that he's somebody else I think that should be in cash games. He's not crazy chalky today, but there really isn't anybody who's insane chalk on DraftKings for a 4-game slate. It's pretty flat ownership today. But shout out to Mike Lawrence. This is probably the funniest thing he's ever said.
I just saw that.
Yeah. Dillon Brooks is a poster of Dillon Brooks above his car bed. That's hilarious, Mike.
That's it's also very, very true. He worships at the shrine of Dillon Brooks. He wakes up and thinks of Dillon Brooks. When he brushes his teeth and looks in the mirror, he sees God.
Yeah. And when he wants to watch TV, when he wants entertainment, he watches highlight clips of Dillon Brooks. This is his whole life is focused around Dillon Brooks.
Oh my God. So
Super
good.
chat from Brian Sullivan. Best duo on Stokastic. Thank you. Love the show.
Think so.
DK Cash, Spencer Dinwiddie and Draymond Green, or Ben Simmons and Kevin Huerter. Boy, Draymond Green and Ben Simmons. This is
Dinwiddie. I can't do it. There's a reason we haven't talked about Spencer Dinwiddie. What are you doing with him today? Because I just refuse to play him at 5,500.
He's in my lineups, and something
I have
else.
0.
Yeah, something of note here with Dinwiddie as well. He played so many minutes last game. He played 38 minutes. And not that you want to play too much into the narrative here, but 38 minutes last game, and now he's playing against his former team. I think there's just motivation for the Mavericks to once again play him that kind of workload. So I'm projecting for a ton of minutes, and it means he projects well for me.
Okay. Not going to happen for me.
Anyway, the answer is Simmons and Huerter for me either way. But I mean, the Simmons versus Draymond Green is it's a tough one. That's the Spider-Man pointing meme right now.
It's great.
Couple more questions coming in. First from Jets World. Conchar started over Brooks last game. No, Brooks started last game.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Brooks did start last game, I thought. You said something about that earlier, and I kind of heard, but I was doing something else at the moment. Dillon Brooks started on the 24th, his first game back. He started. They readjusted. I think there was a tweet that came out that said that he wasn't in the starting lineup, and then they adjusted it so he was in the starting lineup. So maybe you're misremembering.
Yeah, starting lineup last game was Morant, Bane, Dylan Brooks, Aldama, and Adams. I'm expecting the same starting lineup today.
Same.
And also, by the way, John Conchar is questionable. If he's out, then it would almost certainly mean that.
See,
Brooks
if John
starting.
Conchar's out, that's another reason you kind of want to be overweight to some of those later games. And that's where Spencer Dinwiddie is just like an outwardly bad play to me.
If Conchar's out, the thing is, if Conchar's out, it just makes me like the guys I'm already rostering more.
Right. But it just gives you a little bit more certainty and structure there, whereas it wasn't there to begin with. Like everything else about this slate is uncomfortable. That would be like the only comforting thing in terms of value you would have left. Be the only happiness left in your life would be knowing that John Conchar was not out there and that those 26 minutes had to be allocated elsewhere.
That would be a sad existence. That's the only happy thing happening for us.
Well, it's the small things. The small things.
True care, true things. And amongst things we care about are members in the Discord channel. And Jumbo wants
Blink 182 getting back together. Let's go.
That is, are they touring? Are they doing a new album?
Next year, they're going to tour. I already got tickets for Southern Cal. They've got a couple gigs. They already have the 2023 tour put together, and you can get those. First look, American Express card. Definitely get that, everybody.
Jumbo, of the pay up options on DK, whose ownership do you imagine will get steamed up in single entry contests?
Desmond Bane by a mile. He's going to be over 50%.
Bane is going to be very, very... So there's two answers, Bane and Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray is going to be... Keegan Murray is number one. Keegan Murray is going to be the most roster player in single entry, I think.
I thought we were just still talking about guards the whole time. So.
Oh, no, he just asked in general.
Oh, in general? Yeah, no. Those two are going to be shot to the moon, so have fun. I'm not... I have one. I'm playing the $12. Yesterday, I played like all the different single entries and stuff and tweeted about how meth addicts made lineups yesterday. It was just wild, some of the lineups that people came up with for single entry. I'm like, you don't have to get this weird. And then the guy won by like 30 with like Andre Drummond at sub 1% and a bunch of like sub 1% plays all smacked together. The absolute stone cold nuts. It was beautiful.
We have a super chat here from Ryan Nelson. It looks like he's got his power rankings for his favorite couples on shows. Number one is Ben Rasa and Matt Gajewski. Number two is us. And then three is you and Matt LaMarca. That is what came in third for Ryan Nelson, according to his, I'm sure, very official power rankings. And I wouldn't doubt that he did a lot of research into this as well.
I'm not a jealous lover. I'll share.
Moving over to the forwards, it's hard to not like Keegan Murray. He's going to be popular today, but based on the amount of minutes that he played in the last game, 38 minutes, he also played in garbage time of that game. So regardless of the results, barring foul trouble, I expect him to be on the court. Keegan Murray is the player I get the most exposure to today. So when we talk about forward, he becomes the primary talking point for me. Just play Keegan Murray.
Play Keegan Murray.
Any pushback from you or same page?
Same page.
Who are the other forwards that you like getting to today? Because I do have my ownership is so dominated by Keegan Murray. We talked about Kevin Huerter before. He's somebody else I like getting to as well. But amongst the players that I'm really trying to stack from that Kings-Grizzlies game, forward is where I'm getting the least amount of guys, Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter. But by and large part, I'm looking at some of the big men in this game, Sabonis, Adams, and then some of the guards. Forwards, I'm a little more spread out, though. I get Murray, I get to Huerter, and then beyond that, it's a lot of guys around 20% or so.
Yeah, I just finished updating everything, and my lineups are in. I can't see any changes coming in 15 minutes, so I'm just going to be rolling with it. But Keegan Murray, number one. Ben Simmons, the small forward eligibility, as I'm just grouping it in Cruncher. That's still where I'm going in that direction. And Caleb Martin, who we didn't talk about yet, 19% ownership for him. I don't want to really call him like good chalk, bad chalk. It's just that he's the cheapest of chalk that I think is properly owned. And I think I feel better going his direction, especially when you look at our boom bust tool. That's really what got me on a little bit of Caleb Martin yesterday. He ended up leading. I think it was Ryan that tweeted in our group chat. He ended up leading the Miami Heat in terms of ownership. I only had like 7% or something yesterday, but it was still one of those things where like the boom bust tool, if that didn't exist, there's no way that I would have been playing some Caleb Martin. But let me pull that back up here. I X'd out of it there a second ago, but it's just a play that at 4,600 on DraftKings with the multi-positional eligibility and the opportunity that he gets to just, somebody's got to play minutes there in Miami. I know Nikola Jovic ended up getting minutes. Yeah, I said that correctly. Ended up getting minutes for the first time, but Caleb Martin, 16.8% optimal percentage. I get it. There's negative leverage there, but he's just cheap. And I think he's a much better play than some of those really thin, high 3K players. So I'm just going overweight to it and trying to get different elsewhere.
Yeah, and talking about some of the tools we have on the site, if you guys haven't checked them out yet, you get 3 days free access if you're a new user to it. So if you guys have been interested in checking out our ownership projections, player projections, and the other tools for NBA, get it for free for 3 days. That's a price that anybody can afford. Free, not EMAC because he's broke. I've heard he's fallen on tough times, but anybody else who has more than negative money in their bank account, they could afford this free package.
Why is EMAC catching so many strays from you today? What did he do?
He was in the. I just looked up and I saw him in the chat.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, then fuck that old man.
Yeah, I'll kick his cane out from under and watch him fall down the steps.
Yeah. Oh, you need help down the stairs, old man? Let me help you.
Yeah, I'll tip your wheelchair over. All right,
let's go for a walk in the park.
Other forwards that we're getting to on the slate, I get to some exposure to Draymond Green here. Santi Aldama, I think, is a good placeholder also in the event that John Conchar is to be ruled out, because I think he's somebody who would stand to benefit extra minutes in that scenario. But overall, forward to me, Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter. Outside of that, some exposure to Ben Simmons. I also get to Caleb Martin a little bit, Aldama, Draymond Green, Dorian Finney-Smith. There's no real priorities for me.
Nope, no real priorities for me either. It just becomes a mishmash. On these shows, sometimes it's fun to come in with hot takes and it's fun to put you guys on a ton of plays. But for the most part, I could try to make a stand just for the sake of having a conversation and then be like, oh, remember that time that I called Brandon Clark at 4,200 and he was 12% on that slate or whatever. But it's like, all of these guys look the same. It's so hard for me to say one thing stands out above the rest. I'd just be lying to you. So the way that I'm making lineups, I have a lot of them. I am spreading them out quite a bit in this range. Even Harrison Barnes, who I absolutely think is going to get phased out as this rotation goes on. He only played 21 minutes in a competitive game against Golden State, but even him, foul trouble. There's opportunities where, nobody's going to be clicking on the button. And at least I do know sub 10% if he does get run, that there can be expressed upside. He's 5,100. That's kind of a low point to be buying in on Harrison Barnes compared to what we've seen for historical pricing over the course of the last 2 years. He's constantly been in flux where he's 5 to 7K for the last 2-3 years, and appropriately so. But now at the bottom end of the range, like, I can still make a case for somebody like that if things break his way. So I think it's more of a scattershot approach on today's slate, and don't really hang your hat on one play. If you're making one lineup, simply take some of the best plays and find 2 spots where you can get different.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've got a couple guys there. Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, I like getting to, and then just a little more spread out beyond there. We've got a super chat from Weatherman7. It's one of his pair stickers. This is a number 1 fan, and it is jumping up and down. So Weatherman7, he's declared himself the number 1 fan of us with that sticker right there.
Let's go. We don't have to do anything like go to his house or anything, right?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
I mean, maybe one day when we're really big, Eric, we'll do a meet and greet.
Oh, yeah. I'll sign
I don't
wherever you
want
want to be signed. Yeah, we'll do the thing.
Any other really low-owned forwards that are standing out to you today?
No. Do you have any? I said, please tell me them.
I think it would be so.
Kenrich Williams is the one guy that I have 14% now, which is actually under the field. He's the only guy sub 4K I have double digits of.
Where is it? Let me check somebody's ownership really quick. Because I was going to say this would be a funny troll game from Norman Powell. He's in some of my lineups, so he's picking up some ownership. I mean, when it comes to Norman Powell, that last game was such a disaster and his price has gone up, but Kawhi Leonard is still out for this team. There's opportunity for Norman Powell. He's just really sucked this year. And yeah, I have him in 5% of my lineups, but that's actually underweight to Norman Powell.
1 for 12 from 3 seems bad.
It's not great. And then, I mean, we've also got Paul George coming back. So even with Kawhi Leonard out, I actually did think when I was looking, I was like, oh, maybe 5% is kind of somewhere overweight or close to the field on Norman Powell. Not the case. People are actually playing Norman Powell again today.
Weatherman came back for more.
Oh my God.
They usually do.
What is this? I'm trying to describe what this is.
I think that's what it is.
It's the tee-hee of stickers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is in Weatherman 7, another sticker. That is an embarrassed pair. I think that's what it's supposed to be.
I'll do a bobblehead with it too.
That is your Jason Roslin impression. It's the exact same thing.
Hello, PGA DFS golf fans.
It's the exact
Shout out
same
my
thing.
boy.
Super chat from Allrat14. SGA, Wiggins, Martin, or Jones, George, Brooks for cash. I would lean toward. For cash, I don't know that I feel great about either of those combinations. But SGA, Wiggins, and Martin for cash.
SGA, Wiggins, cash.
SGA,
Jones,
Wiggins,
George.
Martin, or Jones.
Look, I like
George,
Tyus Jones.
Brooks
I don't know how you would ever land on Tyus Jones in cash today. That seems a little odd to me. Maybe I'm talking out of place, but whatever. Yeah, SGA Wiggins side for me. I like the Martin side too. He's starting. There you go.
Yeah, that's true. Also, he does start. He's not going to probably replicate what he did last night, but there's more opportunity for him. And I think he's safer than somebody like Tyus Jones just because he is in the starting lineup. Dylan Brooks is also tough to trust in a cash game, just from a standpoint of we don't know how many minutes he's playing. He made a season debut last game, played 24 minutes. If you're getting 24 minutes again out of Dylan Brooks, it's a pretty thin cash play.
Well done. Well said.
Let's talk about the centers. And we've kind of gone over this over the course of the show at this point. Sabonis is somebody I like a whole bunch. You like Ivica Zubac a whole lot. Are you playing Sabonis much, though? Because I know you said that you really like Zubac. Is that prohibiting you from getting to Sabonis much?
No, 8,200 is not too bad. I think there's a lot of ways that Sabonis, that's always been my favorite thing about rostering Sabonis. We saw in Indiana, he is a good distributor of the basketball. He's a really underrated passer. Do I think he's very good on the defensive end and a guy who I want to have be my number 2/1B to De'Aaron Fox to try to win a championship? No, I do not. But he's a really good fantasy point per minute guy. Again, this season, 1.3. He gets the steals and blocks to go with it, averaging over 1 from each category so far, just through a couple game sample size. But that's the kind of stuff he does. He finds a way to fill up the stat sheet. Just a 22% usage rate. I do expect that to go up a little bit more. He did they've surrounded those guys with a little bit more shooting this season. Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, always a willing participant in the shooting department. And then Keegan Murray, I do expect that usage to come up too. But I still think Sabonis finishes probably around a 25-26% usage rate on the season. That's going to give him more scoring opportunity going forward. So I think there's a lot of room left on the bone for him.
Yeah, especially the pace of the game, his price. This is probably close to as cheap as he's going to be the entire season. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I said there's meat on the bone for it. It's just that I like Zubac so much because I think as much as we're making a case for him being underpriced, Zubac is drastically underpriced. And there's two things. One, Isaiah Hartenstein is gone out of there. Huge piece that just from a real basketball perspective, high teens minutes. When you don't have him, you would normally see them play small ball. Their options are limited without Marcus Morris there too. So for me, my big thing was I had Zubac in for over 30 minutes against OKC. And I got him. I said he was my favorite play. I played just an incredible amount of him. He was my second highest behind Luka on that slate. But I'm going right back to the well and playing a ton at 6,500. I think he's a guy that if you don't have Marcus Morris there, he's out for personal reasons, him and Markieff are. So I'm assuming it's a family thing. But
their father passed away.
That's what it was. Okay, yeah. I didn't pay. I've been busy enough. I just knew that they were both out. So I assumed that's what it was. But Ivica Zubac is going to be over 7K very, very shortly because there's no prohibition to him playing big in lineups. And he's just a good basketball player. So you have Kawhi and Paul George there long-term. Zubac is going to fit on the floor very, very nicely. They can go to those small ball lineups with Robert Covington, but I think they prefer not to in a lot of these spots where I think Zubac can definitely do everything you want, clean up on the boards, doesn't necessarily have to have usage in any way, shape, or form. He has no usage basically going his direction. So, you could run yourself into some putback dunks and just really see some massive fantasy outings going forward.
The contrarians, and I shouldn't actually say contrarian because he's picking up ownership, but I'll say a center that I'm also overweight to is Bam Adebayo. I just have to think Adebayo is going to be better going forward. His usage has been high this year. The last two games, 26% usage, 23% usage. Last night, it actually looked like he was going to crush. I had a bunch of him as a lower owned play. And what ends up happening in that game? He plays 28 minutes. He gets into early foul trouble, and then the game is also a blowout. But He played 28 minutes. He scored 33 fantasy points. I think better times are coming for Bam Adebayo. I'm overweight to him. What are you doing with Bam?
I'm about at the field. I don't have any kind of a strong take. He's obviously not performed as well as you would expect. And I've generally been a Bam stan, but what's happened is we've seen that price trail up because of ownership. Like we've seen him go 7K, 7,200, 7,300. I still think he's a little too cheap, but I find Zubac to be way too cheap. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to put them in the same bucket, but it's just a minutes and performance kind of situation for Zubac. Do I project Bam for more minutes? Has he averaged more minutes? 6 more per season or per game so far this season? Sure has, 5.5 to be exact. But I expect Zubac to just really rebound the ball at a ridiculous clip this season. He's already averaging just short of 12 per game. And now I'm expecting those minutes to trail north of 30 without Marcus Morris there. I just think he's the better play. So I'm landing there a lot more. Bam's still showing up there. How much do I have of him? I have 14%. So I'm a little bit below the field, but no strong stand.
Yeah, I just pulled up the Discord chat because we got asked the question immediately. I see a very disturbing picture of some man in a midriff shirt dancing who oddly looks like Ben Simmons. So that's in the Discord channel right now, but questions as well.
Cool.
Favorite plays for single entry. So is there anybody you like for single entry that you like more than you do in large field tournaments?
Somebody for single entry that I like more than for large field tournaments. I mean, I like Zubac for both. I like Steven Adams a little bit if we're talking centers. Oh, we've opened it up to all positions. Yes.
Yeah. He's
Everything.
just asking just single entry, anybody we like.
I think John Moran is an awesome single entry play. He's 22%. Luka sitting at 18%. We've talked about those guys. I would say this: if you're gonna not play Keegan Murray, if you're gonna be one of the like 20%, 30% of people who just hope Keegan Murray goes out and shoots it 3 for 15 or something, Kevin Durant is a really appealing spend up option on today's slate. As I said before, they need to win some basketball games. I know Dallas, the pace is never going to be there. And in terms of like everything you and I like to look at, dunks and threes, I really love this site you put me on. Plus 13.6 net rating so far for Dallas. They're actually number 1 in terms of net rating amongst all NBA teams this season. And that is pretty drastic kind of situation. This is kind of an all hands on deck game, I think, for Brooklyn. Like, you're going to have Simmons play through a back problem, Kyrie and Kevin Durant on the tail end of a back-to-back flying back from Milwaukee. I don't think any of it matters. They're just going to do everything they can to win this game. I would not be surprised if Kevin Durant played more than 40 minutes tonight.
I would be pretty surprised if he played more than 40 minutes. It's so early in the year, and he's been so hurt the last few years. I think that they probably want to be conservative with him, just from a standpoint of the Nets are a team that I think long-term view themselves as a playoff team, kind of regardless of what happens in the regular season. And I don't, like, barring overtime, of course, I don't know that they'd want to push him that heavy this early in the year.
Okay. I something just feels as though like it's already, the narrative around the team is already swirling. It already sounds ridiculous. And Kevin Durant, we know him to like bulletin board material more than just about any other player. The guy created a freaking burner for himself. The man is pretty incessant on letting people know how good of a player he is. Maybe not more than 40 minutes. I just expect him to go out and chuck and try to really, really go at it on the offensive end tonight. I know that that's a little bit more just a personal thing. Just basically, Kevin Durant, I would be shocked if he did not go ballistic tonight. I will say that I'm pretty strongly overweight to him. Just from he's not grading out as my favorite spend up, but I'm north of 30% on him tonight.
Oh, there we go. That is going to be the final take of the night because we're at lock. Eric has laid down the hammer. He's saying Kevin Durant. You would be stunned if he doesn't go off tonight. Paraphrasing a little bit, but Eric likes Kevin Durant quite a bit. So that is going to do it for us today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. But also, we've got a football stream going on right now for the Thursday night football game. So go check that out on the channel as well. But before you leave, like the video and subscribe to the channel.